Alright, welcome. We are still waiting a little bit for some last minute registrations, but this is the Manticxre's Tavern Major number 1 tournament that we're going to be playing in. Based on the number of players, it's looking like it's probably going to be 5 rounds. It's 29, so we're pretty close to an actual 6-round cut here too. Which is good. But we'll wait for that to a couple of late entries here. So we'll talk about the deck a little bit that we're going to play today. It's not particularly crazy different from what I had been playing in some of the other tournaments. However, we have gone back away from the Arthur plus the LeFou in favor of the Cuzco again, since we did see them sort of bullying us a little bit in the pack event last weekend. So I've gone for just 6 1-drops along with the full set of Cuzcos for our sort of early game non-snake related package. I still think that the 1-drops are very good, but I also don't want to be getting flooded with these when I can be just playing Cuzco, which a lot of times is very similar in effect. Combos well with Ursula as a protection against Tremaine, but also draws cards. You can just run this out on 2, attack with it mostly with impunity, and if they kill it, you draw a card, it's fine. I have opted for 17 uninkables this time. We still have the full set of Ursula's, Rabbits, and Be Prepareds, which is kind of my standard at this point. We have gone back to 2 Tremaines, which puts us at 16. Puts us at 14. And then normally we would just be using 2 Pan's Shadows, but I'm opting to go for 17 uninkables and go for 3 today, because I feel like it is probably just the best card in the mirror with the way that the meta has shaped up currently. I think it's very good against a lot of the aggro decks as well. It is not at its best against Steel. A lot of the Steel decks, that's where the Ursula sort of shines. But there are still runouts where you can go like Surfer into Pan's Shadow into Goofy, and then even if they have the answer to sort of blow up the board with maybe a Tink plus Singing to deal with these 2, a lot of times Goofy will still be alive. I think that those matchups aren't as bad, and then this is still very good against a lot of the matchups where they can sing a lot of songs, because a lot of times you can sort of just punch in and deal with it that way, because this also has Rush. So we're essentially relying on having a lot more Rush in the deck, along with a lot more evasives. This Goofy could very easily be Maleficent Dragon. I think you could pretty reasonably do Maleficent Dragons for the Goofy slot, as well as potentially even like the You Can Fly slot, maybe even the Crab, and just go for the full set. I'm opting for something that's a little bit more evasive. We have a very easy like 2, 3, 4, 5 curve on the play that can be pretty strong. So we have a couple of flex slots. I've opted to shave a few of the Maleficent Sorcerers here in favor of doing 1 Crab and 1 You Can Fly. Both of these are sort of hedges in the mirror. I don't love losing to Mini Surfer specifically. So this gives us a little bit more play against those, and it also allows us to sort of keep our opponents guessing in what we have. You show them the Crab, they play around the Crab a little bit more. You show them You Can Fly, they play around this a little bit more. We just have a lot of little pieces of things, and these are both inkables, so it doesn't matter a ton. Our 3-drop slot is a little glut as it is, with the Maleficent Sorceress more or less being the worst of the cards, which is why this got shaved a little bit. One of the slots is mostly just taken up by the 4th Cuzco here as well. So no Elsa. The reason that I'm not running Elsa in this list is I felt like the Pan's Shadow was better at doing the same thing that the Elsa was doing, which is allowing you to keep up your aggression be more aggressive, push a little bit more lore, while still, uh, being good in different matchups. I think this is better in the mirror, and I think that Elsa is a little expensive for what I'm looking for out of my uninkables. This you can still play and ink something, where Elsa, if you're missing on your uninkables, like we already have the Ursulas and the Be Prepared, it just makes our curve even higher, which is fine, but I found that the Elsas weren't particularly necessary. They are very good against the purple steel deck, which is something of note. However, I have not run into that deck a ton, and I have not been struggling with that deck as much since I've started adding like the Pan Shadows back in as well. Which People Arrive did I have? The People Arrive point? I don't know, Alice. It's been like that for forever. Send me a different People Arrive and I'll add that one. I feel like somebody wanted me to add that one at one point. Yeah, we have a giant Sag. I don't know. I haven't gone through and really messed with the emotes a ton recently. We have not started yet, but yes, I am winning because I am going to be able to play a tournament today, so... but I think our deck is positioned pretty well. I do think that the third Pan Shadow is probably worth it, though there will be some awkward draws that'll be a little bit... it's pretty well the same deck, plus or minus a couple of cards, a little bit of adjustments. I'm still a huge fan of like the Rabbits, the Ursulas, the Be Prepareds, the Mauis, the Fox, the Snake, the Surfers, most of the friends on the other side. This can be kind of plus or minus one, and then the Rabbit, and then the Goat. There are a few cards that can shift around a little bit. So the reason that you don't really need Maldragon in a list like this is, so that same slot, right, is generally something that is large, but also can be ink if you need it to be. And usually, it'll be full of, several Maldragons. Sometimes it was Yzmas and things like that. We've opted to switch a lot of those out for things like Kuzco, and in this case, I've been running the Goofies, because it gives us more things to do through the earlier parts of the game, rather than... rather than worrying as much about getting to the super late game to be able to play Maldragon. Since it is 9 ink, that is a lot, right? We are going to be able to play Goofy and Maui throughout a lot of the parts of the game, and it doesn't mean that, we're not going to get to the point in a lot of these mirrors where our opponent can have Maldragon, but Maleficent Dragon doesn't really deal with Surfer into Pan Shadow into Goofy, or even just Surfer into Pan Shadow into Pan Shadow. Right? It's not interacting with that at all. The game is going to be over long before they have the opportunity to do anything with their dragons. And that's sort of the thought behind where this deck is at right now, right? So it is playing a little bit lower to the ground. It has more evasives earlier and through the mid-game. The difference in playing Surfer, 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 or Surfer, Pan Shadow, Goofy is almost nothing, as long as you still have the ink available to do that. Is the combo deck still beating you up? Yes, the combo deck can still do pretty well against what we're doing a lot of times. We have gone a little bit lower to the ground, so we can go like Kuzco into Surfer, into Rabbit or Pan Shadow, and sort of try to keep up with it that way. It does see a lot less play because it's getting bullied by some of the other decks that are starting to see play as well. So we don't have to worry as much about it pretty well because of other decks that are keeping it under control. So I haven't run into it in a little bit. So, other things of note with a list like this, we are still in the Three Teeth and Ambitions, and I don't think that... I don't think that there's necessarily a reason to go up to 4, especially with the Pan Shadows. We'll have to see how the 17 Uninkables treats us today. Alright, so looks like the first round is up. We are against Bobby, round 1. So let's do play, custom, this will be our deck. Alright, so we will battle. And then we'll see how this list treats us here. Bobby's probably on Purple Steel and is a good player of that deck, so we'll see how some of our changes with the extra Pan Shadows treats us today. So we probably don't need the second Snake and the Ursula here, though I'm going to keep it for the sake of ink. Because I'd like this Rabbit, and I don't think I hate this Pan Shadow here. To give us something that we can play on 4 that is not just the Rabbit. Something that's a little bit more aggressive. I think we'll just mulligan the Ursula. Ursula is good in this matchup. However, it is generally not something that we need here. So I think this is not really the matchup for You Can Fly generally. So we'll do this, play our 1-drop and pass. So we are on the play in game 1. So we'll keep track of that here. Alright, so we'll quest. I think we'll ink the redundant Snake, and then we'll bounce the mini back to our hand and pass. Yeah, one of the goats is down, which is notable. Typically, the way that we lose this matchup is not necessarily just by goats. A lot of times, if this deck is able to sort of bury us with stuff like this, then it can just get out of control. And then that's how we lose the game. So, I think I may just upgrade the Snake to a Fox, and then put the Snake back in our hand. I am going to ink the mini, always classy here. We'll quest, and then I think just do this, and then say go. And then if we do draw something that we can sing, we'll do that. If they quest with the Blue Fairy, we'll probably try to bully it with this. If not, we may just play this anyway, since we don't have an overwhelming need to draw cards next turn. So they opt for Crab. They quest, which is great for us. So let's ink the Olaf. Play Pan Shadow. I believe that we'll Pan Shadow this way. And then we will say go. I could have gained 1 lore, but I would rather keep this at 3 toughness, ideally, or 3 health. Why is my stream showing as offline? I'm going to refresh my thing. So they play a Rabbit themselves. I think that's reasonable. I would like to probably just quest with both of these here. I don't think I need to play the Rabbit this turn. I think I'd rather play the other Pan Shadow. So I'm going to ink a Cusco here. Play another Pan Shadow and pass. And then now we're in a position where they are sort of under the gun to do something to deal with the board. Which they can. I mean, they could definitely play Big Tank and then blow up our board, which would be not ideal. But we can get on plan with drawing some cards here. We didn't necessarily need to ink the Surfer, but I don't think it's what we need to be playing now. I'm going to play this Rabbit, draw a card. And then I'm going to definitely quest with both of these. We can go to 10, or we can draw some cards. I think I'm going to do this first on the rabbit. And then we'll see if we need to draw the extra cards. I kind of feel like I should. If we assume that our opponent is going to try to blow up our board next turn, I think it would be a good idea to draw the cards now. And then we can say go. And then we do have the be prepared as a way of following up if they do blow up our board here. Ideally, we hold on to this a little bit later. If they sing with the beast here, that is not surprising to me. But I think it's fine because it does limit what's in their hand. We could blow up the board this turn. I think I might prefer to play the Ursula here. We can maybe keep the goat in our hand. Let's do this. We'll ink the Kuzco. Since we have the double rabbit, we'll do this and play Ursula. And then draw a card, and then pass. Now, one thing that we can do next turn is we can sing the Be Prepared with our Ursula, blow up the board, and then play like double rabbit or rabbit goat to still put pressure on the board, but clean up what's happening here. There is an argument for removing the beast so that they don't draw cards, but realistically, because they played rabbits, they're going to have a lot of cards in their hand anyway, so it doesn't really change a ton. Like, obviously, it is still good to clean up the board like that, but it doesn't really do as much in that spot. So they didn't ink last turn, which is interesting. Because of that, that makes me want to put a little bit more pressure. It could be a dare to be prepared. It surprises me that they didn't ink, unless their hand just doesn't have inkables. But they have 5 cards, so it's pretty unlikely. I think we ink the Always Classy. I do think I'd be prepared here. We have to remove what's happening on the board for sure. Like, that's not really a thing that we have to concern ourselves too much about. And then I think I start with a rabbit, and we see what we draw on whether or not I want to play the Minnie Mouse or play just another rabbit. I'm thinking I'd rather play the Surfer here and then say go, just to put a little bit more pressure, because this is something that they realistically should answer sooner than later, but also we have other stuff going, so if they just play Beast here, that's fine. We can kind of quest with everything here. We can even Teeth the Blue Fairy. I don't want to expend all of my rabbits without having something to bounce them necessarily. I would like to use this Teeth on the Blue Fairy for sure. And probably just deal damage to the rabbit. So I think I can play this to start. Okay, so we got an extra Teeth. We can ink the redundant Teeth here. I don't really care that much about hitting Beast here with the Teeth, but we can very easily hit the rabbit here, I think. So let's do this. We'll Teeth rabbit, hit the Blue Fairy. We'll quest, and then I think I will just play the rabbit, I guess. I don't love that we don't have a way to bounce it, but I need to push them to have to make difficult choices, and now is a better time to do that than later. And they may have another big tank. I was assuming it would be Elsa, tapping down 2 things. They may even have to attack the rabbit here. We're not in an awesome spot. If they just go straight to 11, they can untap and go to 17, and then that puts them pretty close to being able to just goat us out. So they decided to sing Listro. That's fine. So we have a Mim, which is a very good draw for us, actually. I think we can quest here. Well, we have two options. We can either do the rabbits, like do that line, bounce the rabbit to draw extra cards, or we can play the goat. Goat puts us up to 14. We bounce it, goes to 15. Replays it as 16. Then they kind of have to answer what we're doing right now. It's a little risky. But maybe it's not even that big of a risk. Let's play this and bounce it. Puts us to 15, and then I think I do just play this and pass. If they have double swords, it's not good for us. If they have Tink swords, it's also not good for us. But if they don't specifically have those two lines, like this combo, this is generally pretty favorable for us. So this could be a little risky. But because we don't have that many cards in hand, and we don't really have a great answer to the Elsa right this moment, I think we kind of have to make them have it. There are a lot of cards in the deck that don't quite do enough to deal with what we are presenting on board. They can deal with, like, the two rabbits, which draws us cards, which isn't great for them when we're at 15. Another Elsa doesn't really... Yeah, I saw it. I saw. So the second Elsa is good for them, but it doesn't necessarily solve their problem of me having a goat in hand. Like, if they kill the rabbits and we draw something that is good with the goat, that's also not awesome for them. But they are getting pretty close to being able to threaten lethal if they just quest. So that may have to be their line, is just trying to straight race. But we'll see what we draw. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it is not quite lethal. Because this will put us to 18, and then this is 19. I can draw towards Be Prepared. Okay, I'm trying to think of what my outs are with friends on the other side. So if I use this to draw 2 cards, that'll put me to 6. If I draw Inkable plus Snake, then I can win. If I draw Be Prepared, I can ink the goat and then blow up the board. Maui's not good enough. I think I have to play towards drawing one of the 2 snakes that are left, or a Be Prepared. And I don't think that singing makes sense because that cuts off the snake line, so I think I just have to cast this. A second goat doesn't do it. And if they have a goat in hand, then that's not good enough either. Do we try to draw towards Be Prepared? I think I have to kill the beast. Like, I have to hope that they don't have a goat in hand with the way that this draw was. So I think I have to Merlin into this beast, and likely we'll end up having to bash everything. But if I draw Be Prepared here, then we can quest with the other ones. Unfortunately. It's a Pan's Shadow. That's not quite good enough. So I guess we bash here as well. It's an Ursula. Ursula's also not good enough, so I just have to do this. And then play Maui. And then just bash here. And then I guess say go. I don't really have another line here, unfortunately. So the second Elsa was good enough because we were just short with the goat. Was there a way that we could have changed the outcome here to not lose to a goat? Not really with our draw. We could have just tried to use the Mim to draw cards to avoid the double Elsa win. Yeah, if he's got a goat plus anything, then we're dead. Okay. Alright, we'll go to game 2. That's unfortunate. Alright, so this is... Alright, we draw. Yeah, the Olaf was good. There definitely were some choices that I made there that were not necessarily the best in that spot. So here we have the Pan's Shadow, the Rabbit. Both of those are good. We have not a super fast draw. It's hard to keep up with their draw. Goofy is quite good in this matchup, as is Maui. It is possible that we need something that's a little bit faster than the Pan's Shadow here. Maybe we get rid of 2, keep the Rabbit. That's actually fine. So we'll get rid of the Snake and say go. Unfortunately, we're not getting the extra lore in from the 1-drop here, but we will get the Cusco down, which will be useful. I don't know if we're going to need this goat specifically. We're likely going to end up having to ink this fox too, but we'll play the Cusco here. Curve-wise, it might be a little rough this game. With so many 5s, we're probably going to have to get rid of a Maui. So let's quest here. I will ink... Get rid of Maui or Goofy? I think we get rid of Maui. Maybe I hold on to the Fox for now, because if we draw another Inkable, we can, like, bounce the Rabbit back too. Like, we may just go, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we'll follow up with the Rabbit later. We'll see what our next draw is. So we'll play the Crab. If they hit the Cusco here, that's actually not bad for us. Yeah, that's actually fine. Obviously, it slows down our clock a little bit, but it does help our hand pretty substantially. So we'll quest here. I will ink a Fox. And we will just play a Pan's Shadow. I'm not actually going to hit the Cusco here, and the reason I'm not going to hit the Cusco is that I don't want to enable Raging Storm to just be able to kill one of our things for free. If they play this and they sing the Strength of the Raging Fire or whatever and do that, then that's okay. I don't love it, but it's okay. But I'd rather not just give them a free deal 2 damage to clean up our board here. So I will get rid of the other Fox, specifically to play Goofy, and then we'll just quest out. And then we're probably just going to quest out for the next couple of turns here. Without committing much more to the board beyond draw. So they play the Beast, they'll probably quest for 3. So this will be 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We'll go to 13. So we'll play the Rabbit. We'll ink one of these. Quest, quest, quest. I don't think I'm going to play the Mini. I'd rather use it for ink as an Ursula follow-up. If they do manage to deal damage, if they do 3 damage to our board here, then we'll still have our Goofy. It'll put us to 15. And then we can Ursula and, in theory, go up to 18 just with the Ursula, which puts us in a pretty firm goat range as well, which is sort of the plan. It's possible that they're able to play Big Tink plus sing, deal 2 damage, plus do something else, but if they do all of those things, we're not in an awesome spot anyway, but this does put the burden on them to have an answer pretty well right away. So they deal 2 damage. They could deal 4 damage, just double swords as well. That's an option. So they just dealt 2 damage to everything. They're probably going to sing and clear a couple of these up. If they just quest and they don't clean any of this up, then we're probably going to just win the game quite easily here. Alright, so this was loss win. Alright, so that is 1 and 1. So that is the example of a game where we go 2, 3, 4, 5 with Goofy, and it is difficult for them to answer. They probably did not have any outs in that spot, because they need a very specific set of cards to be able to have enough pieces to answer all of that. Goofy makes it really weird. They may have had answers to some of it, but not necessarily to the Goofy. I think I'm going to maybe mulligan 1 Maui. The teeth can be useful here, which means that I'll probably play out the Olaf. We'll see. We'll see what they start with. We definitely don't care about Crab. It is okay in this matchup, but it's not really that incredible, especially not with our hand where we have 2, 4, 5 already. I will play the Olaf, because if they play the Fairy, I'd like to teeth it on turn 2, if possible. I'm not in love with doing that, but I'm probably going to hit it. We can get rid of Goat here. I prefer the rest of the cards in our hand, I think. But I will definitely do this. Boom, boom. And then we'll quest here and pass. And then I'm likely going to go Mini into Rabbit, Goofy, and then have Rabbit sing the friends on the other side. But we'll see. I mean, we'll have to play that by ear a little bit. So they run out the Crab. Crab is fine. We probably can just quest with the Olaf. Olaf makes the Crab hit here. We don't necessarily have to do that right away. Looking at our hand, I don't necessarily think that we need the second Surfer, because we're on the draw, so like the double Surfer line is not as strong. So I think I can ink one of them, play the Surfer out, and then just pass. And then we'll want to use the Olaf before our opponent gets the opportunity to do any real AoE damage. Unfortunately, we don't have our Crab. If we did still have our Crab in hand, this would have been a good line available to us to be able to just crab the Olaf and trade with the Merlin here. The Kuzco can probably get inked, keeping the better cards in our hand. Let's do this, and then we'll play out the Rabbit. We'll draw, and then we'll gain 2 lore here, and I think pass. So our opponent is generally going to have more cards than us. That is not that uncommon for this matchup. It's very difficult to deal with beasts, as well as keeping up with the Rabbit and the Crab, like all of these things together. It's just really hard to manage. It wouldn't surprise me if they don't necessarily attack with the Crab here. The question is now, do we play the Goofy or do we just play the Maui? We can do this, and then Fox. That's a line. I feel like we should play this Goofy out. I think this is still something that I'm interested in doing, but this may allow us to do the Fox to kill this instead. As opposed to the Maui. I think the Goofy is more aggressive, which I'm generally interested in. Yeah, I think I'm okay with running out the Goofy here. So let's do this. Let's play Goofy. We'll quest here. And I think quest here now. and pass. We'll go to 6. The reason that we're questing with Olaf now is likely the crab is going to want to hit this rabbit anyway, but if our opponent has any real AoE damage, now would be the turn, like a big tank or something, which is going to kill this Olaf anyway, so we may as well get our 1 lore in to deal with that. So they're going to grab your swords, they're going to kill these 2 things, leaves us with Goofy, which is fine. So if we use this this Maui to attack the beast, they do gain the ability to actually kill Goofy by trading their Tinkerbell to kill Goofy, because they can attack into the Maui with Tinkerbell, trade, and then shoot the Goofy. I don't necessarily think that that's a bad play anyway, because we have so much else going on that we can work with. I think I'm okay if that's their choice. I wish I had my rabbit back, but I don't know if that matters a ton. But if their play is to like trade Tinkerbell with Maui to kill the Goofy, I don't think that's that big of a deal, because it has so little health on it anyway. So I think I quest with it. Like, I don't really want to do Fox into, like, leaving the beast alive when we can just Maui it. I think we do this and we just ink the Olaf. And then I think I just say go. And obviously these Foxes look a little weird here, but the Maui can very easily clean up what's going on over here. And we do have the line of just playing the Kuzco to do it. So it's interesting that they didn't opt to kill the Goofy here. I guess they wanted to keep their Tinkerbell around instead, which is fine. Or they have another Tinkerbell, sure. That's acceptable. I think that's reasonable. But it's another reason that there's not much that we can do to really protect the Goofy here. But we can just keep Mauiing the Tinkerbells, and it's not the end of the world here. Okay, so that's a little interesting. Like, we do have the goat plus the Mims now. Like, I weirdly do still think it's Maui into the Tinkerbell. But if I don't ink anything, we can't make a second play. And if I ink something and play the Kuzco, like, we're losing either a Fox or a goat. Which I suppose it should just be the Fox then. Because we can't really do Fox and goat stuff in the same turn unless we're inking anyway. And I almost think it's that you just have to do the Tinkerbell here. And I don't think that you can ink the goat. So I think it's this, and then we play out the Kuzco. We are a little bit behind on lore, because we don't really have a lot of cards. A rabbit would be a very good draw, or an Ursula would also be very strong. They do have the crab to sort of bully the Ursula, which is not ideal. And they've been a little bit luckier on getting rabbits than we have, which is pretty common with Beast as a line. So they Listro the Maui, so now we no longer have a Maui to deal with this Tinkerbell. There is a world where we slam Kuzco into Tinkerbell and do Goat, Bounce Goat, Fox into the Tinkerbell just to remove it. We'll have to think about that. We'll see what our draw is, though, and we'll see what they play here. If they play nothing, it means that their hand is probably pretty expensive. Friends on the other side is an awkward draw here, because it doesn't really help us to just pay 3 for this turn. So what are my options? I can Kuzco here, draw a card first, see where we're at, and then we can always do the Goat Fox line anyway. And just get a little bit more cards in. We would have nothing on board, so we'd still be in the same position with the friends on the other side. I think this is probably fine, though. I'd like to get the Tinkerbell off the field, but let's draw a card and see what we draw. Pan's Shadow is kind of interesting. Not necessarily right now, but it will be. Or it has the potential to be. I don't actually think that I can ink here. I don't think that inking friends on the other side necessarily helps us. I don't think that their clock is so crazy fast that we can't afford to wait one turn on ink. I don't love it, but I don't really want to get rid of our only draw here. Like, we may just do the play of play Merlin, friends on the other side, or play Pan Shadow, friends on the other side. So they have a Pan Shadow of their own and a blue fairy. So they've gone a little bit more aggressive, so we do need something to clean up the board here pretty soon. Snake is not it. This is 6. This is rough. So they have 5 coming in. All right, let's draw 2 cards. We would end up with a snake, and they'd be at 15. Let's play this, ink a snake, play a snake to bounce this, and say go. We do have this that can kill these, which is nice. We can at least kill the blue fairy. Unfortunately, we're 1 short of being able to play 2 things next turn, like be able to do the Pan Shadow plus the Tremaine. And they're going to bury us here. Like, we're almost certainly going to lose this game. They've drawn way too many cards, and we have not seen it be prepared to be able to clean up multiple things in a turn. So we have a be prepared now, but it is a little late to the party. They still have 4 cards in hand, which is unfortunate. The Tremaine hopefully will be useful here, though. I would almost like to ink the Maleficent Sorceress so that we can try to play like Tremaine plus Pan Shadow next turn. But they are going to draw another card here. I think I do ink this, otherwise we're just not going to be able to double spell. Like, our best thing is play a 1 plus Tremaine, like that's not really that good. Ideally they don't run out a bunch of things, like Beast plus nothing would be ideal, but Beast plus something is a little bit worse. We do have the Maui as a follow-up. Can I afford to play around Elsa? I don't think there's a thing that I can do to play around Elsa. I think we're just losing to Elsa no matter what. Which is the problem with this deck, and the way that you are able to beat them is when you add Elsas to your deck. Like, it's generally, that's kind of the only way to keep up with Elsa. Like, what I want to do is play Tremaine plus, like, Pan Shadow. But I want to keep the Goat and the Maui, which I can't do, and also play both of those. I may just have to get rid of the Goat, which feels real bad. But I can't afford to not get rid of them. Like, I need the Maui. Right? Because Maui's my only way of, like, cleaning up Beast. But I'm just dead to Elsa anyway, so it doesn't really matter. And Goat doesn't have the ability, even if they play Elsa, where the Tremaine plus the Pan Shadow isn't beating it anyway. So maybe the Maui just doesn't matter if Elsa's what they play. But the Goat doesn't matter there either. I think the Maui is it. I think the Maui is the line. So we'll ink the Goat. We'll play Tremaine. Like, they had the out with Olaf to be able to not get Tremaine out of the universe here. I think we play that, we play the Pan Shadow, and we just hope to dodge, specifically Elsa, or an Ursula even would not be great here. There's a lot of other cards that would be fine here, but this looks like an Elsa. So now we are dead to Goat plus Snake no matter what. Which they likely don't have if they played Olaf, but they are forcing us to be prep here, which we don't have. We can not do Tremaine to interact with this. We can Maui hit this, and then that's not good enough, so I guess we're dead. Yeah, only seeing one rabbit. Like, our opponent has drawn 30 cards. They've drawn about the same amount of us as we have, but their cards overall were a little bit more impactful for what we were doing. We had only one Be Prepared to be able to do multiple things of cleanup, and they were able to like grab your swords and double Tinkerbell to clean up what we were doing. So unfortunately, it wasn't quite good enough. And then they were able to sort of bury us. We ended up drawing a lot of like foxes and not a lot of other things to interact. And then the Elsa finished us off here. There were maybe some spots where we should have prioritized just trying to bounce the rabbit instead of playing Goofy, for example. Where if we do that to try and keep this in hand so it's a little bit safer, it is probably better. Like, our turn 4 play could have been play the rabbit, but on turn 5, it's entirely possible that we were supposed to do Fox bounce the rabbit after drawing the card and just play for a little bit later game rather than allowing us to be totally blown out by the grab your swords plus the other removal. And I think that's probably where it ended up. But we didn't draw those, and we didn't make that choice in the moment. We were hoping that we drew another rabbit, and we didn't. It is hard to keep up with the draw from this deck. It is more of a tempo deck. If you prioritize drawing cards, sometimes you can just get out-tempoed, which we did. You know, we were not really doing anything after our opponent cleaned up our sort of 3-5 line there. And then our opponent was just playing 2 or 3 cards to our 1 every turn, which is just not good enough. The Tremaine looked embarrassing there, which Tremaine generally has been looking quite embarrassing as of late. I don't actually think that Tremaine is in a good place right now because it is very easy for good players to play around Tremaine. All it takes is keeping a 1-drop. Like, you keep a 1-drop in hand, and then all of a sudden, the Tremaine is unusable. Like, it literally doesn't do anything. It is just a bad card then. So there's something to be said for Tremaine just, like, being very awkward a lot. But such is life. I mean, you don't always... you don't always draw your cards in an order that works, and a deck that is playing as much draw as Purple Steel, and this is sort of an older Purple Steel list, but in a deck that's running this much card draw, it is difficult to sort of keep up with what they're doing, because they just have more things that draw cards. They have Beast, they have the Rabbit, they a lot of times will have the Friends on the other side, or Maleficent Sorceress if they're running them. And a lot of their cards, even like the Let the Storm Rage On, are doing more than one thing. It does some damage, but also draws a card. And then once they get to the point of playing Elsa's, if you don't have sort of a follow-up, you know, a card that is good in this matchup is Ursula, and we played none of them in Game 3, which obviously would have been very good, because it forces them to answer it rather than being able to... just keep playing things to the board. You know, you saw that they played... They're playing some Pan Shadows now, but they played just like a Pan Shadow and a Blue Fairy, along with just a couple of things on the board, a snake and a rabbit, and they're just out-questing us because we didn't have anything that really cleaned up the board, which is sort of the difference between these two decks. If we're just playing the low-to-the-ground stuff, then they can clean it up just like any other aggro deck. And then bully us from there, and that's what happened. So I think it's possible in that game, if I had opted to sort of draw more cards with the rabbit as opposed to being more aggressive by allowing the rabbit just to die for free and then running out something like Goofy, if I had instead just opted to, you know, do the Fox line, put the rabbit back in hand, draw an extra 4 cards with it, it could have set us up a little bit better to play for a later game. though the Elsas are still pretty tricky, even in those longer games. I think it maybe would have given us more options to avoid getting destroyed by just some general AoE from just like big tinks. You know, running out big tink, was able to kill mostly our whole board, which is not great, right? You want to force them to have to commit something like Smash or just a direct removal spell on something like your Goofy or something like your Surfer, rather than having the ability to clean it all up kind of for free. So it is a tricky matchup. I think it's kind of 50-50. It does come down to play draw a little bit, and us losing game one was pretty brutal. That was the game. That was our game to win, and when we didn't, then it set us up kind of for failure from there. Because as you saw in game two, we were on the play. We had a good curve that was even better than what we had done in game one, because it ended with Goofy as opposed to another 3 toughness something, right? So the 3 Pants Shadows, not necessarily for this matchup. I probably could have played them maybe a little less safe and then used the, like for example, the Fox to push lore a little bit more rather than protecting the Pan Shadow, like just to get an extra one in. Maybe that just is better. You know, you sort of allow them to deal 2 damage to this, use their song or use their turn to do that instead, and then you know, you let them trade into the Fox and do that, and then you just follow it up with something else. Maybe that's better. It's kind of hard to say. It's a tough matchup because they do have so many sort of varied removal that is good against 3 toughness. You know, the Grab Your Sword plus the Tinkerbell, double Grab Your Sword. Any combination of things like that, or even Tinkerbell plus some Let the Storm Rage on, can be pretty brutal when it comes to some of the evasives, because it actually is something that can interact with them directly, as opposed to needing your characters to interact with them, which they can still also do because they have the Blue Fairy, because they have some Pan Shadows now. They can still interact with characters, but they also just have spells and non-interactive things outside of Be Prepared that can come down a lot earlier. Our opponent did play Beast on 5 every game, which obviously is what the deck is trying to do. This card is absolutely absurd. I think that if you're playing Steel and you're not playing 4 Beast Tragic Heroes, you're probably not playing a deck that's super optimal. I think at the 5 cost, this card just kind of does everything. Your fail case on it is that even when it's miserable and terrible, it still is an inkable card. So it's an inkable card that functions very similarly to Rabbit and just gives you a ton of card advantage when it's not addressed. And there just really aren't clean answers to Beast in red that are inkables. So you can play something like Dragonfire, which it is an answer, technically. You can take your entire turn 5, spend it all on a single spell, and remove their Beast, and that does answer the card 1 for 1. I think that because they have so much card draw in a deck like Purple Steel, that I don't really think that's a great way of answering something like Beast. I think there are other matchups sometimes where answering the Beast that way is a little better, but in a deck like this, because they have so much card draw between the Beast, between the Rabbit, even the Ursula, and to some extent the Yzma, because they have the Yzma that can shuffle some of these in. Not to mention the Blue Fairy, which if they have that down and they do something like Yzma or something like Beast, they're also drawing extra cards. They draw extra cards with Tinkerbell, etc. So they have so many more draw engines than a deck like Red Purple has, where you're sort of relying on these rabbits really heavily, and when you don't see them, it can be pretty brutal. And then you have things like Friends on the other side instead, where, you know, you're having to use your characters to sing this, otherwise you just lose a lot of advantage in tempo. And being that this is a tempo deck that draws a ton of cards, it's able to ink every turn, and then eventually it just has a couple things down and plays an Elsa. Well, now that forces your opponent to have the question, do you have a Be Prepared, which functionally time walks them, because if they're just casting Be Prepared straight up, for 7, then it opens up the entire turn for you to follow it up with, say, a beast plus a rabbit, a beast plus, a blue fairy to draw an extra card, or whatever, so that then now they immediately have refilled the board, added a decent chunk of lore. Like, I have played this deck a little bit, and it is pretty good. If it didn't have such a miserable matchup against a lot of the steel decks that are seeing a bunch of play, I would probably have been... I would probably be playing this, and also if I had these beasts in paper, I would probably maybe have looked into the steel lists a little bit more. Currently, I do not have any beasts in paper, so that's why I've generally been leaning more towards the red-purple versions of these decks, because I have all these cards already. I am likely going to get the beasts, because in the next set, I think that the beast is still going to be very strong, and I'd like to open up my ability to play cards a little bit more, especially in paper, just because, we don't really know yet what cards are going to come out that are going to be incredibly powerful for the metagame. Like, we don't know if the steel removal suite of, say, Strength of the Raging Fire, Let the Storm Rage On, Grab Your Sword, Tinkerbell, like, this stuff may still just be the best thing to be doing to stop the majority of the decks. And we're just not in a position to know that yet. Because there's still another 100+ cards that we're waiting on for that. Right, so we're still pretty far away from that. So I can look at the rough metagame here. So we have a couple of Amber Steel, it's like 4. We're looking like we have 1, 2, 3, 4 Blue Steel. So a pretty good mix of Blue Steel and Amber Steel. Looks like there's probably 1 discard deck, which we would like to avoid. There is 1 Amber Amethyst aggro deck, which ideally we would also like to avoid. There are 2, it looks like, purple steel lists. No, maybe 3. Yeah, Bobby and J Quartz and Rays here are all on the purple steel, and then it looks like the rest of it is Amethyst Rubies. So it's what, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So like roughly half of the opponents here are on Amethyst Ruby. I didn't realize that they'd added a metagame tab. That's interesting. That is actually very helpful. Somebody's on Amethyst Sapphire. That's cool. Had Zepha, of course. Hey, Michelangelo, how are you? But yeah, so looking at the metagame breakdown, it's not particularly surprising. We lost round 1. We were against Bobby with Amber Steel, which is not like a terribly favored matchup. We were on the play, but we didn't have a draw that was great into that's great into this deck, especially now that we've cut the Elsas. Like, we're not super favored there. I don't think we're a terrible underdog, but it is pretty close, and it is a lot draw dependent. They drew a lot of rabbits. We're playing red-purple like we typically are. We've adjusted a couple of the numbers on stuff. We're not playing the Arthur list today. We're looking at something close to this here. This is what we're playing. So we're playing an extra Pan's Shadow, which may be a mistake, may not be. I wanted to try it to see if it's good against the Mirror specifically and other like aggressive decks. We're playing the Goofies because generally I think they're good against like Blue Steel. Over something like Maleficent Dragon, be kind of the same slot there. And then we're playing a little bit of other mirror tech, as opposed to as many Maleficent Sorceresses. But it's a pretty stock list, I would say. But it has the 4th Cusco as opposed to just the 3 there. So the big changes that we made were just going from 3 to 4 Cuscos, adding another Uninkable and going up a Pan's Shadow, and then sort of adjusting the numbers on like our Surfer Mini hate to have a crab and a You Can Fly as opposed to like 2 fidgets or whatever the case might be. Alright, so I would assume that the next round should be up pretty quickly here, because it looks like it is done. So I will wait for the next round, and then we'll jump in here. But yeah, I don't care too much about the change to the Maleficent going down to 2. I think this card even could totally get cut depending upon what you're removing for it, especially if you're going up the full amount of Cuscos. I don't think that it impacts your draw terribly badly, and I've found that I've been inking this card a lot more lately, especially if I have a rabbit. Obviously, if I don't, I'll still run something like this out to progress the board. It is still good at singing friends on the other side. But I found that of all of our 3-drops, like, this is certainly the worst. And it generally isn't a card draw spell so much as it is just like a body to put on the board that also replaces itself, which is fine. But this will end up being ink a lot more often, especially when you get to some of the higher uninkable counts, strictly because you're going to need ink somewhere, and if you play this and miss on an inkable, it is just worse than playing this as an ink a lot of times, mostly because if you need that inkable to be able to do your second thing and you don't draw one, then that card can be pretty brutal. So okay, so the next round should be up shortly here, which will be round 2 of the... Oh, there we go. Okay. Alright, so we are on the next round here. It looks like we're against Zephyr. Alright, so we'll go to custom, this one, these, and then we'll figure out our game name here once Zephyr checks in, and then we'll go to the next round. Alright, so I believe that they were on something spicy. Blue-purple or something of the such. We'll just play our normal game and hopefully that'll be good enough. Tired today. Zephyr is streaming, but also not checking in, huh? I see how it is. We'll give him a second to pop in here. Before I go badger him on his stream. see. I think he's just finishing up a ladder game, probably. Their game was probably really quick. Would make sense. But if I don't see him in a minute here, then I'm probably going to bug him on his stream. Be like, hey, what are you doing? We battled Zepha. It looks like we got to go first. So we're on the play. Get rid of some uninkables. The rest of this is probably fine. Can use a Goofy as ink and then maybe play the other one. Not the best hand I've ever seen in my life, but it could be a lot worse. We do have some draw. We have the ability to use the Mim if we need, and we can get rid of one of these two as ink. The Ursula wasn't a spectacular draw, but I think it'll be fine. Let's do this and pass. And it could be that these Goofies just like aren't it. Now that they're a little bit more known, maybe we don't need to be this aggressive, and we just play towards putting some Maleficent Dragons back in. I don't know how many more tournaments there are going to be to play before the next set comes out anyway, seeing as how it's coming out in 2 weeks. So I'm not terribly concerned about it, but that's just something to be aware of. I think I'm going to get rid of the Goofy here, because we may need this Maui, but I likely am going to end up having to use this as ink as well. I may even have to bounce the Kuzco to hand to turn it to ink to guarantee that this rabbit can come down, but we'll have to see what their draw is here. Grammatella. It's a pretty aggressive draw. Okay, that is not it. So I guess we quest here. We bump this, and we play the Mim and bounce this and pass. This at least guarantees us having an ink next turn, while still giving us a little bit larger board so that we can play the rabbit. Hand's not great. It is going to be challenging, I suspect, to get to to 7 this game. We're gonna have to struggle a little bit depending upon what these rabbits draw. Popsicle the draw card. If I draw Pan's Shadow, I'll probably opt to wipe the board and not feel too bad about that. The next set for Lorcana comes out in 2 weeks. So there will be another 204 cards or whatever added to the format. I guess we ink the Kuzco. So I could kill both of them. I could just play the Pan Shadow and then knock out the Pascal. The Corel's like a little annoying here. Like if I play this, I guess they sort of just have to trade with one of my two things. Likely the Pan Shadow, I suppose, but we do get to kill both of their things, which I suppose isn't so bad. It does put them to 5. What if we just did this? What if we just did this? So the reason that I don't want them to go to 5 is if they play Cogsworth, then they just get to use the Cruella to eat the Pan's Shadow for free, and that seems terrible for me. This way, at least, we have a turn off before they have that enabled, where they're going to draw cards and push that. So they may just trade here, and that's fine. If they don't and they opt to quest with it, I'll probably just smack into it. If they don't do any of those things, then we may end up holding back the Pan's Shadow more. We'll see what we draw. Oh, goodness. Okay. Am I ever getting to 7 if I, like... I kind of need to push lore with the way that I've played this game. I think I have to teeth the Cruella here and then go for 2, and then just start gaining 3 a turn. Which I sort of hate, but that is what we're doing. Do that, do this, pass. And I may even need to use this rabbit to, like, attack in and trade with something, too. Just to draw a card. I really don't love this line, but it does give us a little bit more room to play with a slightly more aggressive board. Because we now have the evasive here that they are not currently dealing with, because they're just drawing cards. Okay, we drew a fox, which is probably our best draw. If we don't get an inkable here, it's a bit awkward, but I think I should do this first. I'm gonna do this. Draw a card. Draw 2 cards here. We'll ink this. We'll quest, and then I think just kill the rabbit. Like that, and pass. Yeah, the locations look cool. We'll see. I haven't seen any locations that, like, really have inspired me to do anything in particular yet. But it is certainly possible. RFK Thierry and JD Sox, appreciate the follows. Thanks for hanging out, guys. So they bounce the snake on their Merlin, that makes sense. We do have a pretty aggressive clock, going up to 10 next turn. Again, hopefully we're drawing inkables to put ourselves in a favorable position to actually still progress the board while doing what we're doing now. Nice, we drew an inkable, that's great. Let's play the fox. Sorry, play the rabbit. So we drew a goat. I do have to ink something. I'd like to keep the goat if we can, but I think we can get rid of this fox. Then just quest out. And then pass. Our opponent is likely going to start playing things like Hades now. They can go up to 11. Hades is not as big of a problem, though they do have an interesting option where they can Hades the Pan's Shadow, and then they can attack both of these Mims, which, if that's the line that they choose, I'm okay with that. It allows us to play down an Ursula and then force them to interact with the Ursula, which we can do for a few turns in a row here. But if they do opt for going with that line, it also does give us more ink, which can catch us back up here. Top Hat Henry, appreciate the follow. So they opt to just attack. I don't know if they're going to do the removal line. It could just be something like Ursula here. we'll have to see. So they play Ursula. Okay. So it's not great for us. We can, in theory, play our own. What is the alternative? So if we quest here, they'll go to 17, but they don't have enough to be able to drain us out, even at 17. So this will put us at 14 if we quest with everything. Do what I can here. I think I do get rid of Teeth and Ambitions over the Goat, for sure. And then I think I just play Ursula. I don't think Be Prepared is the answer in this spot. I think it's Ursula, and then I think it's just Sing out or Quest out with everything as opposed to drawing 2 cards. It's entirely likely that this Friends on the other side ends up becoming a draw. So now we're representing 8 coming in. If they don't answer anything, they can very easily answer the rabbit, just with like the Mim Snake or whatever. But they don't really have a Be Prepared to try and clean up the board. So the best that they can do here is probably remove the Pan's Shadow and then like attack their things into our board. Or play something like Elsa. But if they're playing Elsa, now we have the ability to wipe the board, which, you know, may not necessarily be good enough. And this is the problem when you're playing a deck that isn't running Elsa against one that is you frequently very far behind in a lot of these spots. But we can gain quite a bit more lore and then still be prepared. So it's another Pan's Shadow. If we gain 3, that'll put us up to 17. 17 puts us within range of being able to like do goat stuff to just finish it. I certainly have to be prep here. I'm just debating on being at 16 or 17. I feel like 17 is a better number, which means that we should just ink the Friends on the other side most likely. Because we're just not going to have time to sing it out. This is the only turn that we're going to be able to sing it, and if we're not singing it now, that means that we're probably not going to sing it at all. So I think we do this, and then we be prep. So that's going to put them at 9, which will let them go to 10. An ideal out for this would have been... honestly, a 1-drop would have been very good for us here, I think. As opposed to the Tremaine, but Tremaine is what we've got. So we'll see what they play. If they just do, like, Ursula Pass, then I'm probably just going to be able to Tremaine it. But if they do something on top of it, we might be in a really bad spot. Like, if they just play a 3-drop here, we're probably dead. Yeah. Do I have a way of stopping this? If I play Ursula and they don't have a goat, I suppose that is a way to do it. Do I have any other alternatives? If I play Tremaine, it doesn't really set us up to be able to win the following turn. I almost have to just do Ursula and then hope that they don't have a goat or a spellbook, because there isn't really a better line for us. Like, Tremaine is functionally the same as just playing Ursula, but we don't get the card draw, right? So we're dead to Elsa, or... I mean, we're dead to most cards. Let's just play Ursula. A second Tremaine. Yeah, I guess we just do that and pass. And this is the problem with playing so many uninkables here. Which is why I've been sort of considering going back on them, because like our opponent has 11 ink, because they've been able to put an extra one in there. They were able to put one in from Grammatala, and like we're just stuck here with a handful of Ursulas and not enough ink to play with, and we were on the play. So we've been not having a great time today. We'll take the play with this. we draw a much more reasonable hand here. We've got our 1 into 2. We've got either crab or rabbit as a follow-up, and then we have our rabbit potentially with what else we're working with here. I am probably even interested in maybe playing this goat. So this is a pretty good hand. I think we're going to ink one of the Always Classies, and then we'll play out our snake here. And then we may end up using this crab to draw an extra card. I appreciate the Prime sub either way. Thanks to the Bezos bucks. We'll see if we can't win the match anyway against Zepha here. Alright, so we quest. In this case, I think we can ink another one and then just play the... Yeah, it was unfortunate. I mean, they had a lot of cards in hand. It's not surprising that they had a goat. Generally, they will have a goat in that spot, right? Just because of the volume of cards in hand. So it's not particularly uncommon. That is a great draw here. We will run that out. Place this. I think we just battle with the snake here. If they want to choose to ramp off just bashing into the snake, that's fine. If they want to do crab plus Grammatella to kill the snake, I'm not... I don't really care about that. They could go up to 6 with the Tala here, but they opt not to. I think our play... It's kind of weird. We could just push more lore, go up to 5, and then play like the goat or the rabbit. I kind of want to play towards having this Goofy in play. If I get rid of the crab, it doesn't necessarily set us up in a good way to be able to do that. And also have something to interact with, say, a Cogsworth, but maybe we don't care about interacting. Maybe our plan is just to try and kill them with our things. So maybe I do get rid of the crab. And then do we play the goat or the rabbit? I feel like we should play the rabbit. Because we may need this as an uninkable, I guess. Let's play the rabbit, yeah. And then we'll just quest here and quest here. It is a little unfortunate that we drew the Surfer, but I think getting the 2 lore off this Surfer is better. And then we'll be able to have a Goofy down as opposed to playing the Surfer, which I think is going to be stronger. We'll probably use this as ink and then just rely on this Goofy instead. I may just snake this Mickey Detective as opposed to... Oh, they're just going to bounce it, sure. That's fine. Honestly, if I can bounce this rabbit, I probably would. Next turn. But I'm probably going to sing here. Most likely. Let's see what our draw is. We might just use this to push lore. So they're going to be at 6. So they're already getting awfully close to doing some more aggressive lines with Hades or Elsa or whatever. I'm debating on if I just go up to 9 here, or if I'd rather have the 2 draw from this. I think because I can just ink the Surfer and play Goofy, I don't necessarily care about the draw 2 cards as much as I want the extra lore. Because we'll go to 9, and then they'll presumably have to kill 1 or 2 of these things. Maybe I do just do it now. Because, like, what is their play next turn? Like, Ursula? We have this, we have the goat. Maybe I do just draw the cards here. And just go to 8. Honestly, this is not bad. The Teeth plus the Tremaine. Like, if I can clean up the board a little bit, I can get some good value out of the Tremaine with the Teeth here, too. I think this is fine. Since we didn't have anything to bounce the rabbit anyway, I'd rather maybe use the tempo that we can gain from it. they don't have as many clean answers to our evasives with what they have in play. Like, Ursula is okay for them. If they quest out here, we're actually probably in an okay spot. Because we can kill everything and then kill the Ursula with the Tremaine. Which I think I'm down to do, as opposed to gaining all the extra resources. Like, I can hit Goofy into the Mickey and then just hit the Rabbit into the Tala. We still get the 2 out of this, and then we get to play Tremaine. Which means that I don't necessarily need the Teeth if our Tremaine is already going to be in play. But we can hold the Maui just in case the Maui is useful later. Or as Ink next turn to get us to 7. So I think our play is we do this. And then we let them choose their trigger. Puts them up to 8. I think we hit here. I know that we're not gaining the 2 lore, but I think the benefit of doing Tremaine against just eating an Ursula is far more than the 2 lore that we would gain off of this. So we'll do it that way. We'll gain our 2, and then we'll pass. So this was a pretty good turn, I would say. Especially against these colors where they don't really have a clean way of catching up. You know, runner, Elsa certainly isn't bad. However, it doesn't necessarily catch up that quickly. I would have liked a bounce for the Rabbit or the Tremaine. I think I'm going to Maleficent first and see what I draw. So we got another mini. I'm thinking that I want this Maui more than I want this other mini. Though, we could just keep going wide. I think I want to do this. I'm going to play the Pan's Shadow. And then I'm just going to quest out with these. And then pass. Because now we're representing 10. And they just have an Elsa in play. So I think we're probably okay here. Just maybe playing a ton of evasives and just trying to beat down. This is functionally the same as a surfer in this spot here, just because it's a 2 lore flyer, 2 lore evasive. So there's not a lot of answers that they can have that don't cost too many resources to be able to deal with everything that we're working with here. So they play another Elsa, which is able to deal with 2 of the evasives. They can, for example, attack Tremaine in this spot if they'd like. With the Elsa, which seems to be most likely where they want to be. And then we would gain 1, 2, 3, 4 still. And then probably just play the Maui to bash against the Elsa. Just to remove this off the board as well. So they also play a Snake, presumably to bounce this Elsa. That's fine. We'll just play the Goat instead. Goat and Cusco. So we quest. I will play a Goat, get them to 17, and then I'll just play a Cusco and pass. There's just too many things for them not to have a board wipe. So this game should be pretty well in hand, I would think. And then we'll just go to, we'll go to game 3. And maybe the solution for dealing with this deck is that we just go really wide. Play as many of the evasives as we possibly can, because they just don't have as many answers. They do likely have Pan Shadow in there, and they probably have other ways of answering the evasives outside of that too. There could even be something like Jetsam or whatever in this, or just the idea of ignoring them with Elsa and just trying to go around it a little bit is possible too. So they kill the Maleficent, they'll kill the Rabbit, we'll draw a card. But we just have too many bodies doing the gain here. Alright. We will go to game 3 against Zepha on Purple Sapphire. I do think that the deck is interesting. I think it leverages Elsa better than most of the purple decks. similar to how the steel deck is able to do it and use it as a lot of tempo. I do think it does suffer from the problem of if your opponent plays too many things and goes too wide, that you just don't have a great answer to those go wide strategies, and then that can be kind of problematic. Yeah, it is also a lot. I think it's just these three. I don't mind keeping a snake because we can always just use it as ink. This is not a great hand. I would have liked a 1-drop or a Cusco. We could still draw one, of course. We do have a rabbit, which is good. We do have the Pan Shadow, which is still pretty strong. Our opponent starting on a 1-drop is not great for us. I think we can get rid of a teeth to start. We can try to hold on to a snake. If we can maybe do snake plus rabbit later, that would be fine. I may or may not play this on 3. It probably is just the Surfer instead to get a little pressure, but if they end up playing something like a Cruella, I may want to hold the second teeth, which if they do, then we're probably just thinking the Maleficent Sorceress. This card is certainly at its worst when you don't have Friends on the other side as well, since Friends lets you draw 2 for free, obviously, if you have the additional like 3-drop in play, which is usually better to do than getting rid of your Stylish Surfer realistically. So they do play a Cruella, which is fine. So given that that was our draw, so we do have another Pan Shadow, I'd like to get rid of this Cruella at some point. So we probably want to keep this Teeth and Ambitions. And one of the crabs is gone as well, yeah. So I think I am going to get rid of either a snake or a Maleficent Sorceress. In this case, probably a Maleficent Sorceress, and then I'm just going to say go. There's a world where we have this rabbit in play, and then we use the snake on 6 to draw extra cards with it. But we are getting bullied by this a little bit. We're going to run out the Surfer next turn, and then probably do something along the lines of Sing Teeth with the Surfer, and then kill the Cruella or something to that effect on the following turn. So I think that'll likely be our play, but we'll see what our next draw or 2 is. So we finally found an Always Classy, but it doesn't line up favorably into anything that our opponent is doing. There is a world where we Teeth and Ambitions the Always Classy as opposed to, you know, blasting this for 2 or whatever. But having a little bit of damage on these isn't the end of the world, because it doesn't really do a ton negatively to have it in this matchup at least. So I do think it is still the Surfer, and we pass. And then we're likely looking to just Teeth the Cruella and then play either a Pan Shadow or a Rabbit. The Pan Shadow being more aggressive, the Rabbit setting us up to, you know, potentially Fox on the turn after. It even gives us a line where we keep the health on the Mini Surfer and we instead blast the Rabbit for 2, quest with this, bounce it. Our hand is pretty for Glut, so there is a world where we want to, like, you know, do this on the next turn, and then, you know, we can follow it up with something like this, but we'll see. It also depends on what our opponent is doing and whether or not we need to Fox immediately or not. Because if we have to interact with the Flaversham, then we may need to get the Foxes into play to do that. Well, this is an unfortunate draw. I guess we don't need the second Fox. 1 Fox is probably fine. What I'm debating here is what the ideal line is for us. If it's to play the Pan Shadow just to get a little bit more pressure on board, or if we're going to need this Fox Mim and this Rabbit to sort of dig us out of this hole because we're so far behind. And if that's the case, then I think we actually just have to ink the Fox. We're going to use the Teeth on the Cruella, most likely. We're going to play this Rabbit here, and then we're just going to go Sing Teeth, 1 damage here, and then pass. And unfortunately, because I've chosen to do this, it sets us up sort of for failure with this Fox. I can't Merlin Rabbit into Flaversham and then also bounce it to my hand and also kill the Flaversham. I should have shot the Surfer is what I'm trying to say. Because if my intention was to kill the Flaversham with the Rabbit, I absolutely needed it to be... I absolutely needed this Rabbit to have health so that I can attack into the Flaversham and then bounce it with the Fox first, as opposed to what we're looking at now, which is if they play an item, which I don't think that they have a massive amount of, but if they play an item and then they quest with the Flaversham, I'm going to have to be in a really awkward spot where I, for example, attack the Rabbit into it, deal 2 damage, and then we Fox that way, if I want to be able to kill it, which kind of sucks. So we don't really have a clean way of dealing with the Flaversham because we opted to do this attack. So they have a Pan's Shadow here. Okay, that's fine. Alright, so we have a Be Prepared that we've drawn into. So we have some options there. We're sort of stuck playing 1 or 2 things a turn. So I can play 2 things if I play both the Fox and the Snake this turn. I don't think that attacking into the Flaversham makes a ton of sense, then, if we're going to play 2 things. I may end up just inking this Stylish Surfer here as well. That is also a line. It'll allow us to keep the Goat, and then we play more towards these being our evasives to deal with this. Then we just wouldn't attack our Goat into this board, is basically what I'm seeing. We go to 3, we play Mim, Fox, and Snake, and then we just bounce these both to our hand. And then we end up with a 3-4 and a 3-3, facing down what this is. They can go to 11, but then we're setting ourselves up for this later. I think that's not awesome, but I think it's where we're at here. So let's do this. We'll play the Fox, bounce this to our hand, ink it, and then I'm going to play the Snake on the Rabbit and draw a card, and then pass. And the reason that I'm not attacking into the Flaversham here is I'd rather the Snake not be able to just eat our Fox when we can Pan's Shadow and hit their Pan's Shadow instead. And I think that's a more valuable line for us, because they may even hold back the Flaversham in this spot, since we do have so much aggression to be able to just kill it. But we're not in an awesome spot. Our opponent's been able to gain a lot of lore from just their early dorks, and we have really sort of been playing from behind most of this time. And this is sort of the risk of running so many uninkables, but also so many Pan's Shadows, is there's a couple of turns through the middle here that we just don't have favorable answers to, like, just middling aggression, because we're only playing 1 thing a turn. We'll see what our draw is. I would like to be able to kill this, like, more than 1 thing in a go, but I don't know if we can. Like, I don't think we're going to be able to kill this Flaversham and also deal with the Pan's Shadow, unfortunately. This is game 3. Unfortunately, our opponent took the on the play game from us, which is not great. But we can be prep next turn if we had to. I think I'm getting rid of the Maleficent in that case. And then I'm just going to clean up as much as I can here. And then just leave the Flaversham alive. We could maybe put 2 damage on the Flaversham, because it doesn't really hurt us if we do. We just hit here. We trade the snake off, and then I think we just put 2 damage there. I don't think it costs us a ton to put the 2 damage there. Oh, yeah. It was this. So they unfortunately drew a Popsicle, and they get to draw 2 cards, which is not great for us. We've left this Flaversham in play for way too many turns, which allows them to draw a ton of cards with it. We are now approaching a spot where we can try to clean up the board and still have stuff in play, but our opponent is also in Haymaker territory, where they can just start playing bigger things than what we've got going on, and since they're already so high up on lore, we're a bit behind. So they're going to Fox, I assume, the Rabbit. We can't really trade our way out of it, unfortunately, just the way that the game is set up, or the way that we've set up navigated this game. All of our things just have so much damage on them that we can't super favorably trade our way out of this. Like, I can Pan's Shadow and take out the Mickey here, and we can just trade the Fox for the Flaversham. But we're not really gaining lore. We're not really getting that far ahead, is the problem. And if I'm doing that, then I'm not also inking, or then I'm not also playing something like, if I ink a goat, I can play the Mini Surfer, which I think I have to do, just to get some threat on board, because they can go to 14, but then we'd be threatening 6 every turn. But I don't know if that's even really a number that matters, is the problem. I do think that I have to play this, which means that I have to ink a goat, because we're just so far from the goat being viable here. Like, I think it is just this. I think it's this, and then we just, like... So that at least we can double spell here. But our opponent has 7 cards in hand. They've drawn 7 more cards than us this game. Between the Flaversham and their Rabbit that they've bounced, and then getting the extra ink from the Detective. Like, we've been just getting buried in card advantage pretty well this whole time, so... I don't know what our answer is to just this Ursula. Like, they can just outrace us with this. We're just so far behind on lore. If they quest up to 14, like, they're going to 18, we're just dead to the goats that are in their hand. But I don't really know what else we can do. Like, I can't B-prep this because we just have no cards. We gain 6, but... and they have another thing. Yeah, we're just dead on board. Our games have not been going super well today. Which does happen from time to time. If I B-prep this, we're basically just dead. Because our opponent has 5 cards in hand, and they can follow up with just a ton of things. Because we know that at least one of them is a Rabbit, too. And we're just not beating a Rabbit follow-up either. Or just like a Goat Rabbit. If our opponent just untaps and does Goat Rabbit, we're also dead. Like, that doesn't really fix our problem here either. Is there anything in our deck that really solves what's going on here? If we assume that they have a goat or 2 goats in hand, like, we're just dead to that anyway because they have so much lore. Because we literally can't even... If our opponent is just goat, we can't race that, period. Even if we B-prep this turn, we'll never play cards fast enough to be able to outrace that. So, like, I guess I have to play around them having a goat at all. But we only go up to 8. Like, nothing that I do is ever going to be enough to try and race this. Like, I almost just have to do this. And then just say go. We can go to 17, 18, and be prep, and then just dodge goat forever. That's not even good enough. Yeah. I don't know. There's probably too many pan shadows in here. We've been getting flooded with pan shadows pretty dramatically. Like, I don't know what else there is to say about it. I think it's just maybe too many uninkables. Like, it's too many uninkables for what we've been playing today. It's the way that our draws have been. I think 17 is still just too much, maybe. So this number should probably be back to 2 where it belongs. Our Cusco numbers, I think 4 has still been fine, but I think it's entirely likely that that 4 of this is just too many. I guess we're getting buried in card advantage, but our struggle is that through the mid-game turns, like the turns where we're at like 4 and 5 and 6 ink, all we've been able to really accomplish is like playing a 4-drop every turn. Like, we need more less expensive cards to be able to like double spell sooner. A lot of the turns there, our opponent was able to double spell consistently, and we were sort of stuck with, you know, a rabbit and a pan shadow or 2 pan shadows. So we're sort of trapped in this limbo where we're only playing one thing to progress the board or to draw cards. Like, there's never really been both. Like, we never had the option to do both of those. So it strikes me as the deck is maybe disjointed right now, and it needs to either be fully in on the evasives package, and just the plan is that you add more 1-drops, and your play is just like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or whatever, so your intention is to try and get there. Or you opt for something that is a little bit slower, and then you maybe have some draws that are fast, but you are not intentionally leaning into, you know, trying to play a bunch of these. Though I do think that it is good in the mirror. Obviously, we have not fought the mirror yet. So the next round should be up pretty quickly here, I imagine. So let's mark that off. Yeah, our results lately have not been spectacular. In the last tournament and in this one. Which it is just variance, of course. But some of our card choices have been favoring fighting the 50% of the metagame and not the other flavors. And we've just been running into decks that are set up a little bit more favorably to deal with the flyers than what the mirror is. Where if we do run into the mirror, I think we'll be in a little bit better spot. But, you know, sometimes that is how it goes a little bit too. You can only tech your deck for certain matchups, and I do think that having more pan shadows is generally going to lead you to winning mirrors a little bit more easily, because it just gives you more of the flyer into flyer type draws, or, you know, Fox into playing a pan shadow to be able to clean up their flyer or whatever. But maybe we're really overcommitting into dealing with that, and the true solution is that you just ignore that sort of a thing. You know, you play a couple pan shadows and the minis, and then you just play like a normal game without all these extra evasives. Like, maybe the Goofy is just too cute. Maybe the You Can Fly and the Goofy should just be Maleficent Dragons, so that you have more potential for late game plays as well. You know, as a follow-up to Ursula. From your opponent, you just play Maleficent Dragon, as an example. Especially in these matchups where they don't have Tremaine, that is typically a stronger play. You know, the Goofy is designed for the Steel matchups, but it's really only at its best against Blue Steel. So maybe it isn't really even that strong. Maybe it's like, because the Maleficent Dragon is also generally good against those matchups. Maybe we just need to be shaving down on this random nonsense and increasing our count of just a higher density, better cards. But again, the format is going to change theoretically quite dramatically in a few weeks, so it isn't always necessarily something that we need to think too hard about. I'm likely not going to be grinding much more of the ladder between now and then. I think the season ends Friday anyway, and then it's just going to be sort of back to the lab with the new cards for a few weeks. I'm not sure what they ended up deciding, but like I don't really feel like grinding 300 games is necessarily something that I care to do in this format anymore. We're not going to learn a ton by playing 100 games of Green Fossa or another 100 games of this deck. You know, whatever changes you make, it just slightly changes certain matchups, right? And then it sort of all just comes down to like your draws, whether you get a lot of rabbits. You know, the decks that I've done the best with, I think maybe were a little bit cleaner. They leveraged more of the card draw cards, and they just were intentionally trying to be better consistency on some of these things. I mean, we've played aggro. We might play aggro in the next format. We'll see what cards come out. All right, so this will be our game here. Play custom. This. All right, we will battle. This will be round 3. Not so great games so far, but we're still rumbling. So if we are against red-purple, the You Can Fly does have some value. It's possible we just get rid of the goats, put them back in the deck, and then draw 2 new cards. We can afford to get some uninkables. I would have liked a 1-drop, but I can live without it. But we'll see what they play. We are on the draw, and we could still get our 1-drop. So the You Can Fly has value here if we can get down this this snake. I see this is one of the steel purple players then. So I do think I'm still going to get rid of the snake. It does make the You Can Fly a little bit worse here though. But we do have the Kuzco as a turn 2 play, which is still reasonable. Kuzco into like Pan Shadow. Oh, this must be an aggro deck if it has Befuddle. Okay, it does look like an aggro deck then, so this is not a great hand to deal with that. I think we can get rid of Friends on the other side against an aggro deck, just in case they have something that this You Can Fly is good against. We need this to sort of try and bully the Pinocchio here, but if they do bounce our Kuzco, it's a little awkward. They play Hercules, which is Bodyguard. Chosen character. So we can actually still kill the Pinocchio here. Because we can give the Hercules evasive, I believe. And then we can just attack the Pinocchio. And then debating what we need to get rid of here. Like the Mauis are generally going to be pretty good if we can get there. I don't know when we're going to have time for this Friends on the other side is the problem, but it's our only real card draw. Yeah, I think I'm just going to get rid of Friends on the other side here. And then pass. Yeah, the Hercules is pretty spooky here. Luckily, we were able to sort of remove one of their higher lore characters, but We don't have a clean way of really getting rid of this Hercules this turn. So we may even have to just play the Mim Snake as a 3/3 just to be able to try and bully their Hercules. Teeth and Ambitions is probably worth keeping. It could be that we just run out the Pan's Shadow quest with the Kuzco, and then the intention is that the following turn we Maui and then use the Pan's Shadow to like clean up with 2 things. So maybe we get rid of the Kuzco here. I don't love running out Pan's Shadow and not doing anything with it, but we don't really have a ton of options here. So I think it's just this, and then we pass. I'd like to keep this if we can to try and deal with maybe another Pinocchio off the top, since this is a bit of an aggro deck. Hercules is pretty spooky. This could even be a Tiana deck, which the Mauis are going to be very good against. So there's a Beast. We could deal 2 damage to the Beast if they don't draw cards. We'll evaluate that on our turn here. So, okay. So we can use the Kuzco plus the Pan's Shadow to kill Tiana. And then we can just bash the Hercules with the Maui. Alternatively, we just attack the Hercules with the Maui, and then we Teeth the Beast and put 2 damage on the Pan's Shadow, maybe? What are we inking here, then? I guess it has to be the Snake with the way that our draw is shaping up. Alternatively, we Teeth the Kuzco, because we don't need it necessarily, and then we keep all of these things healthy, and then we can keep our Snake. Yeah, I kind of like that, actually, because we can sing this, and then deal damage here and here, and then we'll draw 2 cards. Or we'll draw a card, rather. Yeah, we don't need Goofy in this matchup as much as we need these Mauis. So now we can play the Maui. We attack here, and then we just quest for 2. And then we pass. And then we have this second Maui that we can use to sort of clean up what's on the board. We're in a little bit of a danger zone, because now if they play, for example, another Beast, even if they quest out, like, we can't really kill enough stuff to be in a super good spot. So they sang Listro and then Strength of the Raging Fire, which is not awesome for us. The red numbers, I mean, they're just damage counters, right? It's no different than having a dice that's on 2. They're representing that there is damage on that character, right? So they play a Maleficent, and now we're pretty well just dead on board. This is 6. We can clean up 2, so a goat kills us, or any play kills us. Well, what we're counting is the number of damage counters on the thing, because you can remove damage counters, or there's some cards coming in the new set, you can move them. You can move damage counters around, which can typically be very good as well. Yeah, being on the draw was not it this game. We're just dead to a goat. We're dead to, like, any play, really. I guess they're only going to 17, but it's still just, like, not awesome. I'm surprised that they opted to bounce the rabbit. I guess they figure if they play the game longer, they still have more options towards, like, gaining the extra lore. Or they just had a goat that they ripped off the top. And then we're dead anyway. Okay, sure. Okay. I'll play Okay, guess we're on the play. I don't know. I don't know what's going on today. We're doing our best, and it is just not particularly good here, so not our tournament, I suppose. Unfortunate that we have not fought any mirror matches, which is what our deck is designed to, you know, interact with. We don't really have a 3. Maybe we do this to see if we can hit a 3-drop. I mean, that one is a 3-drop. It's not the best 3-drop, but I think I'm getting rid of Cusco. We're going to play the mini. There is a world where I'm not supposed to get rid of the Cusco there. I'm supposed to get rid of the goat. So that I can go 1-drop, 2-drop, so that I play around Befuddle. Like, our opponent has demonstrated that they have multiple Befuddles. If we untap and then Snake, we're just literally getting time-walked by Befuddle. If they go, like, Maleficent into Befuddle, it's really bad. Olaf into Befuddle isn't as bad. But that is a good way for us just to get buried in a game like this. Do we get rid of 1 goat? I'd like to keep the Maui. I think I can get rid of 1 goat, and then we should have enough ink that we won't need to get rid of the second one. Like, this will be our turn 4 play, like 3, 4, 5, 6. And maybe that'll be sufficient to keep up with what they're doing. Okay, so there's the Befuddle, which I'm not particularly surprised about, again, given what I had said. It would have been nice to have the Cusco there, but it doesn't really change a ton. We actually have the crab, which is interesting. Is it interesting? It gets awkward because if we draw a card, like our turn 4 turn is like play a 1, play crab, and then we just use this to hit their thing, which I guess is fine. But it means that like we don't necessarily need this goat. Like, we're not gonna have a turn to play this goat, which really sucks because that's 2 of our goats then. But I think it does have to be this Maleficent and then pass. Like, I just hate these games. We've been getting absolutely bullied by just 1-drop draws from our opponent. I did have the option of playing around it, I suppose, with the Cusco, and I didn't take that line, but so that's maybe on me. So here we actually do have some options to interact somewhat okay with this, because we opted for the crab line. We have this on 6, which is also interesting. I think I have to get rid of the Stylish Surfer here, unfortunately, so that I can play 1-drop plus crab, because we do need to pull something off the board here. And then now we have the crab, but we also have like Snake Crab or Maui to be able to attack this. We can even hit something, snake the crab back, and then do crab ability twice, and then hit everything on the board if we have to. Like, if they opt to just hit the Olaf into the Maleficent here, I think that's pretty good for us. Because the mini, like, I guess it's the same for them, right? Especially if they decide to Olaf, or if they decide to bounce this way. So they opted not to replay it, which is good for us. Especially because we have the Teeth and Ambitions here. I can mini this, and then they can Fox it back. But then we can use the rabbit to hit it, or the Maui. I think we play this for sure. And I'm considering just doing the crab into it instead. and just like inking the snake. Like, I'd really like to use the snake to draw cards. We do have another Merlin Rabbit, which I think is maybe better. I think I'm going to do this and then pass. Because if they want to trade here, that's fine. So there's not really health in this game like there is in Magic. Instead, each character may or may not have the ability to quest for lore. So rather than attacking their thing to reduce their health, you are angling towards 20 to be able to get to 20 lore, and then you win. So this one can quest for 1, this can quest for 1. Something like Maui can't quest at all, but the Tremaine can quest for 2. So we could wipe the whole board with attacking both of these into the Hercules and then playing Tremaine. We could also just play Maui and hit the Hercules here. And then we could trade these 2 into the Mim. I'd maybe rather quest twice. Ideally. I think we do bash here for sure. I think that's pretty solid. I'm just not sure that attacking 2 into 1 makes sense in this spot. We can hold off on inking this turn as well. I think I just quest with both of these and pass. Because now that we have the Maui, we want to encourage them to attack and challenge these. Especially because we have the Tremaine to follow up. So they use this to just draw cards, which is pretty good for us, I think. It allows us to keep these to be able to get the 2. So they play Pinocchio, and they play a Maleficent. So we can actually clean this up just with what's in our hand, I think, including the Tremaine. So if we Maui the Mim, and then we sing Teeth with the Rabbit, on the Rabbit, I guess, we can still quest here. Yeah, so I think it's this. I think I ink Maui. I think we sing Teeth. Sing here, dealing damage to the Rabbit. And then killing a Maleficent. Then I play Tremaine, make them sacrifice another thing. We quest with the Minnie Mouse here. And then we pass. And then now we have a little bit more pressure because we have the Tremaine in play. Let's see what we draw here. I'd like to just draw 2 cards. B prep, B prep. Oh, those are not it, but we drew into a Goofy. Let's quest here, quest here. I think I am going to ink the Goofy. I'd like to double spell at some point in the future, and the Goofy is not going to allow us to do that. If our opponent goes too wide and we have to be prepared, we're going to need to do that sooner than later. And it may even be on this upcoming turn. So we can gain 5 and then play a Rabbit and a Mini Surfer. So we'll go to 12 and then we'll add 3 more. They can kill Tremaine and like a Rabbit, for example. We could try to race here, actually. I should really play the Rabbit first before I do this, just in case it's another draw. Alright, so that's fine. So let's do this and we'll just race. I think we can afford to race here. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think with the Minnie Mouse and like having so many dorks, I think we can try to race in this spot. Even though they're drawing the 2 cards, like they're going to have to do something with this beast this turn, and then we can use the Maui to try and bully it. Because like now they can't draw any extra cards from it. Get a snake, which is actually pretty good. Because it can allow us to draw more cards. So they bounce that instead of the goat, which is good for us. As far as trying to race. Like, if they're just doing a bunch of nonsense, that's usually pretty favorable for us. And then they do this, and then they get to clean up the mini? Sure. So at the end of this whole transaction, we still have the Surfer in play. And we can still go to 15 this turn, which I think I'd like to do. We'll go to 15. I'm going to play the snake on the rabbit. So we'll draw a card. We have a fox. I think I'd rather just Maui and kill this thing. And then we can ink, you can fly, because I don't think we need that in this spot. And then we say go. And then this will get us to 18. I feel like the Surfer alone is going to defeat them in this spot. Because if they're pushing towards trying to answer it, like they just can't have that many answers in their deck, the way that the deck is constructed. So, but now unfortunately we're on the draw, which is not great. But we battle and we see what the we see what our draw is to see if that's good enough. So the Bodyguard makes the Pan Shadow a little weird for us. These can go for sure. I don't want to over mulligan, but our hand isn't incredibly slow. Maybe we get rid of it like this. I think you need some Pan Shadows. I think it's possible that we have too many Pan Shadows in the deck. I think that's sort of the conclusion that I'm coming to, is having 3 is maybe too many. I think 2 is probably the ideal number. Because then you want that effect and you need it in the mirror. It is one of the best cards in the mirror actual, especially on the draw. But we haven't fought the mirror at all today. We fought a lot of steel decks that it is not as strong against. Like, we're fighting against aggro decks. I mean, we're just dead because our opponent's playing aggro and we don't have a play for 3 turns, but we'll play it out anyway. Not having anything to do at all is pretty miserable. Like, we have the 4 Cuscos and the 6 1-drops. Maybe we could have mulliganed a little bit more aggressively, but I just don't think that sets us up for success either. They are going to play out their whole hand. Maybe we can catch up with these 2 into the Maui. But we're going to be behind for the majority of this game, I think. And if they have just a goat or 2, I think we die. No, I made a couple of other little changes, but nothing that's terribly far outside of that. There's also an extra Cusco in here on what I would normally be running. There's a crab that I normally wouldn't have. Like, if they just have goat here or that, it's really bad. So I guess we're just dead. Okay. We perish. Neat. That is a game of cards that can happen, I guess. So, I mean, what did we learn? Not much, really. I think we don't necessarily need the 4th Pan Shadow. I think 16 Uninkables is the limit. I've been playing some 17 Uninkables lists the last couple weeks, and I have not liked them. I have felt that they were just not great. You end up just not having choices with your inkables. You have to just ink whatever you draw, and then the cards that you're forced to play are the ones that are uninkable, because you just don't have as many choices. And I think that's okay for Rabbit, and I think for Be Prepared and Ursula that's okay. But if you're glut on too many Pan Shadows and Tremaines, your hand just is non-functional to interact with what your opponents are doing. I don't necessarily think that you need more 1-drops. I think this is okay as long as you still have the Cuscos. But obviously against an aggro deck, if you don't draw any of this on the draw, you don't draw any of this on the draw. We didn't even have a snake in hand, so we just had none of these cards. against an aggro deck, and then they just barfed out their entire hand of uninkable garbage and then killed us. You know, there's not really much that you can do. More Maleficents wouldn't have solved that problem. Like, You Can Fly being Maleficent Dragon wouldn't have really solved that problem. The major issue that I had is that we lost a lot of games on the play when we should have been winning them. Which, if we're in that world, then we really should be winning those games. If we're teching towards a certain matchup and we're just not seeing that matchup, it means that we're likely losing percentages somewhere else. We aren't facing any of the bigger steel decks. Like, we're facing aggro steel. We're facing, you know, purple and blue. Like, we're just facing purple decks that don't have Surfer Mini. So when you're playing a card like Pan Shadow, which is good against Surfer Mini, but it is not great against a lot of other cards. It's okay against some of the aggro cards because it just has Rush. But if you don't have some of the early interaction, you know, a Mini or a Kuzco, or even just like Mini into Snake or whatever, something to threaten their cards, they can just play a 2-lore character into 3-lore character and then just kill you before you do anything. If your first play is play a 1/3 on turn 3 and then it dies, your deck is non-functional. It does nothing. It literally doesn't have text, so then you're dead. And that's exactly what we demonstrated in that last game. None of these tech cards mattered at all there. Even the Pan Shadow would have been okay in that spot if we had a little bit of early interaction to work with. But because we're running so many uninkables, we can't mulligan terribly aggressively either. If you mulligan 4 or 5 cards there and you end up hitting double Ursula B-Prep, you're also just dead in the same way because your hand is also non-functional. So there's a world where, with being on the draw, knowing that they're an aggro deck that also only has a handful of higher lore dense early characters. Like, it is just the Maleficents. That's what I wanted this. Like, they just have the Maleficent and the Pinocchio as higher lore early characters. So they had the nut draw of just, oh, I have a handful of this and this. Sure. But when you're in a situation like that, and you don't have anything that's interacting with what they're playing, and whether that forces them to do Befuddle instead of adding another character or not, you know, if you don't have a 1-drop at all, and they lead into Maleficent on the draw, this is just going to quest for 6 before you can do anything about it. Irrelevant of any other play that you make, the Maleficent just gets in for 6 if you don't have a play. But if you have a 1-drop and they choose to befuddle it, they still can get in for quite a few with it, likely 6 anyway. But then instead of developing a Pinocchio or instead of developing double 1-drop after that, they just don't have the ability to do that. And you can maybe play an additional 1-drop after it. You know, if we look at the metagame of this event, right? If I go to this, the metagame for the event, 14 of the decks are Amethyst Ruby, and that's what we're teched to beat. So if we're teched to beat the deck that we should see most of the time, great. If we see it and we battle it and we win and we're favorable in those matchups, that's great. But you also still have to be able to win the other matchups too. And I don't know if the way that the deck is constructed currently is just not favorable to doing that or not. Perhaps the Goofy just isn't good enough. I don't think it would have mattered in that last match because they just aggroed us to death. But we're losing in spots where I don't necessarily think that we're a huge underdog. And some of it is because we've just had really awkward draws with too many Pan Shadows. And I like the effect, but I think it should just go back to 2. I mean, honestly, the list that we should have been running most likely last weekend and this weekend is pretty well the same thing that we had settled on weeks ago at this point, even at the 5K, which is, oh Oh my god, dude. Larcana deck builder is actually killing me lately. Like, why? Why are you like this? Fuck, dude. Hello? Dreamborn is literally just shitting the bed lately, and I don't understand why. Like, I don't know why it doesn't consistently load. It's crazy. Anyway, so if we go here and we look at the decks, okay? So the deck that we were on several weeks ago was this, and it had another one of these, no crab, maybe crab. Can run one crab. And then it had two of these. And then we had room for one other card. At the time I had this, which was 2 You Can Fly. Before that it was a couple of fidgets. I don't necessarily think that the fidget is that relevant here. This could easily be something like this. It could easily be like we add an extra 1-drop. And I think that would be respectable. I opted for an extra Cusco. But I think we need some extra early play. But the list could be something like this, which is very close to what we're running now. But the Goofy could likely be something else. You know, I think that when the Goofy is good, it's okay. And there maybe have been some times that we should have navigated the Goofy a little bit differently. But the way that some of these games have been playing out, with how the decks have been adapting, on turn 5, or even with the Pan Shadow, like on turn 4, we're not set up to be able to just play a 5. You know, and I don't know if we have to go back to the drawing board, add more 1-drops so that we can just be weaving in more 1-drops. But I just don't ever feel like we have enough card draw for that. So I don't know what dramatic changes this deck can have that really even matter. And again, maybe it just doesn't, it's just not important because the new cards come out in 2 weeks, and then we'll just be playing with that. Like, I don't know how many more tournaments there are between now and then that we'll even be playing in, and I may just take a bit of a break from it until more of the set gets spoiled, so I can start brewing with that and just playing new decks. And then it's just irrelevant, right? I don't know what the ideal list is. I think you should likely be playing the full set of Ursulas. Otherwise, you're going to lose to Blue Steel and other similar decks if you run into them. But, like, the 4 Ursula looks embarrassing if you're just not running into those decks at all. You know, if you're running into random nonsense that the Ursula just isn't as good against, then it looks embarrassing. But we also haven't fought the mirror at all today. Literal half of the metagame is Amethyst Ruby. Like, if you look at the standings, it's all Amethyst Ruby. All of it. Literally half the decks are the deck that we would like to be facing, and we didn't. So when you have your deck built to try and fight that, and it is half of your available opponents, and you just don't see it, then what? What is your plan for that? And I guess we currently don't have one that is working super favorably for us. So maybe the solution is that you just play a more consistent late-game deck. The cards that you're playing early are not necessarily as aggressive, and you're just trying to play towards more of the late game. So then instead you're looking at you know, something like the regular sort of style where, you know, you have more of these, you have more Tremaines. I don't think Yzma is really that good, but I mean, but even this list is not particularly different than what we're running. Like, it's plus or minus a handful of cards. It's a bit of an older list. Is there any that are a little bit more new that aren't hyper aggro? No, because most of these decks haven't been updated in months because they don't need to be. You know, the deck that was good, that's just a rush deck. Like, the decks of these that were good 60 days ago are still fine now, as long as you're not running into the mirror constantly. So we're over-teched for the mirror, is basically the conclusion that I'm coming to here. Is if we're actually, you know, actively running into the mirror, then we're in a good spot. But I think, like, what Hark is running is probably pretty close to where I should have been to begin with. And if you look at this list, it is not far off from where we're at. It is a little bit more on the 1-drops, so there's an extra thing here. There's, I believe, only 15 inkables in this one, because they shaved an Ursula for, likely more Maleficent or that type of effect. But they just have the minis and the pan shadows to deal with opposing surfers. So if you have this list and it runs into, triple surfer, and you don't have this one, you just have less outs to it, right? But maybe that just doesn't matter. Maybe there are enough representation of other decks in the metagame that you just don't need, perhaps, to be playing all of those extra answers to stuff, and you can just play these Maleficent Dragons as more of a late game. You can play some amount of the evasives, For what we would do with our list, it would involve then, like, cutting back on a pan shadow by 1, shaving the goofies, and just adding more of the consistent cards into the deck. Maybe just adding an extra 1-drop, go with 7 of these and the 4 Kuzcos, and then, cutting the goofies, like the You Can Fly, and then adding in some amount of Maleficent Dragons. And that might just be a more consistent plan that doesn't overcommit you into, I need to go 1, 2, 3, which is great in the mirror, but may not always be, or, 3, 4, 5, but that may not always be the correct position to set yourself into if you're not in the actual mirror. We're overtech for the mirror is what I'm seeing here. And that's probably an overcorrection to this deck just losing in the mirror, which in theory this deck also should be good in the mirror, but maybe this one is also overtech for it. And we just need to go back to the roots of having the Maleficent Dragons, having that slightly better potential for an end game, and then just relying more on, hitting your rabbits, drawing a bunch of cards, and then, having those 5 or 6 cards in your hand when you get to the mid or late game, as opposed to sort of vomiting out your hand with a ton of flyers to do it more quickly, and then just not having the resources to close, which I think is what we've been running into. Having more of the 1-drops as opposed to the Kuzcos, like getting this up to 7 or 8, makes the 1-drop into Snake Line much more common, so that you can interact more favorably with the aggressive piles. I don't know if that necessarily would have solved the issue that we had in that last game. Obviously, if they had Befuddle and we didn't have just double 1-drop, we were probably just dead in that spot anyway. But if you do have double 1-drop in your opener, then the line of play mini, it gets befuddled, then untap, and you just go mini, or mini Olaf, or whatever, that can, in theory, keep up with what our opponent was doing, where they just dropped a 1-1, a 1-1, and then 2 more 1-1s. Where the play that we had, instead, had no option to interact favorably with that. It just didn't do anything. And it limited our options to do something like a Mim Fox, where we just have another rush character a little bit earlier, because our turn 3 play had to just be the only guy that we played that game. So, leaning more into this part of the game, as opposed to the 5-drop area, like, this plays maybe more like a mid-range, because it just has more 4s, more 5s, and less like, let's do some cheap stuff, let's maybe bounce it a little bit and draw cards, and then let's play potentially 2 spells with a 1-drop plus a thing, or a 2-drop plus a rabbit or whatever, to carry through the part of the game before you get to, your Maleficent Dragons and your Ursulas and such. And maybe that is where we need to be. I think, given the way that our draws were, it certainly feels that is the case. Whether you stick with the 15 uninkables like Bannable is on, or if you play the full set of Ursulas at 16, I still think that the 16 is fine, especially if you leverage a little bit more of this, a little bit less of this kind of stuff, so that you care less about your mid-gamey plan. You know, sometimes you do like a surfer into a pan shadow and that's okay, but you don't necessarily need to focus as much on, like, you have to do your evasive package, you have to do all of these. You know, I think the Goofy is good in certain spots, but it's possible that it's just not good enough anymore, especially when there's a lot more answers to cards like that. So I'm not sure. We should probably play it out for points, I guess, given that there are that you do get some points, I believe, for participating in these, I guess. But we are absolutely big dead here, and a bit of an unfortunate run out today. I would like to battle this list against a mirror at some point, and there are plenty of mirrors to be able to do that with today. So, let's see how much time is left in the round. This, I guess. So there's another 15 minutes. Most of the matches are completed, however. There's just one that is not, which is... which is Popsicles versus the Amethyst Steel. It's kind of an interesting match. I don't necessarily think that the Popsicles are that much of an underdog in this spot. So we'll have to see how their game 3 ends up shaking out, but I imagine it'll end up pretty soon. And then we can in theory battle another round or two. If we can end up fighting against some RP opponent, we'll at least see if our thoughts on having the third Pan Shadow is even beneficial in those matchups. I mean, maybe it's still the same situation where the fourth or the third Pan Shadow just like doesn't matter. Like it is an irrelevant card, and it just makes your inkable count worse. You know, it gives you more 4-drops that are not just playing Rabbit. And it limits more of your options through the mid-game for double spelling. Like if you have a Kuzco plus a thing, you almost always can run out a Kuzco, but you can't always run out a Pan Shadow plus something. But, you know, you can do a Kuzco and a Fox on 5, or you can, you know, just do your Maui, which is fine. But then on 6, like, your normal 6 line that you'd want to do is something like Rabbit plus Snake, or if there's already Rabbit in play, you Snake it back and Rabbit it just to draw more cards. Well, there's nowhere that Pan Shadow really fits into that, unless the Pan Shadow is already pretty good. So just being glut on these is not necessarily the solution. You need these cards, but you can draw into them in a deck that generally can draw a lot of cards, like this one. So you don't always need as many copies just to see them. So I think we've made some tweaks in the last couple events that are probably just making the deck worse, especially against some of these other like other things. So we will we'll just have to wait and see. You know, if we lose next round, if it is against the mirror, we'll probably be done. If we win next round, we might battle it out in the last round. We'll see how long the round takes. You know, I can only talk so much about the list and about the choices. I don't think our matchups were miserable, but like there were definitely huge blowouts for our games when we were winning, because I think we've made the deck a little bit too aggressive for what it is, which is unfortunate, but such is life. Alright, so there's a couple of minutes remaining here, so we will wait. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I still do enjoy the deck, despite our results today, and I think by and large over the course of the entirety of the format, I think our deck has been doing well. Just not today. Just not the last couple of weekends. And I think it could be because the deck is a little bit more known. I think it could be that that we're just, our heart's not in it because we're towards the end of the format and we're just excited to play with the new cards too. I think that's definitely some of it. I guess while I'm waiting, I will be right back. And then we'll be back for the next round once it's up. Shouldn't be too long. There's only about 10 minutes left in the round, so, and they're already 1-1, so I'd imagine that as soon as they're wrapped up, then we will go to the next game. Alright. We're back. Sorry for the delay. Next round is up here. So we will battle, I suppose. This is round 4. We are currently 0-3. Our games have not been going stellar today. I think it could be some of the changes that we made to the deck, some of the directions that we maybe took the build are not awesome for what the metagame that at least what we've faced so far today ends up looking like. So we're going to jump into the game, and we're going to see what we can do for round 4 here. So we do go second, so we are on the draw. So we'll get rid of the Uninkables. We have 1-drop into Kuzco, some 5s. It's not the most exciting hand, but at least on the draw we do still have the ability to play cards, so I think it's worth a keep. And these are the draws that are really 1-drop heavy. And again, maybe the play is just that we're being too conservative with our mulligans. It does look like we're against something akin to the mirror here. So we do have the ability to see if the way that the deck is constructed is favored here or not, whether it's on the play or the draw. Alright, so we quest here. I think I can ink probably the Maui. And then we'll play our Kuzco here. I'd like to save this if we can, to play with like the Ursula. We may not have that option because we don't have a ton of card draw, but I think that gives us some room to play here a little bit. So we've got a Teeth, which we can use to hit this crab if we want at some point. I do think that this Goofy will be good in a couple of turns, potentially. I don't really think I want to be wasting a turn like teething this crab, though. I think that's like a huge spew, realistically. Like, we're probably just going to... Well, maybe it's okay. Like, we really can't quest with everything here because we just don't have anything going on the board. But there could be a world where we just, like, teeth the crab, and that's fine if we, you know, quest with both of these and they hit the Kuzco. They're probably going to hit the mini, though. Right, let's do this. We're going to quest and then just pass. And we'll just not do anything on 3, which is really unfortunate. Not having a 3-drop's pretty bad. Especially if they just play Rabbit or whatever. So they opt to hit the mini, not a big surprise there. And they play a Pan Shadow, are they going to hit the Kuzco? Okay, sure. Don't love that for us, but Rabbit's at least a good draw. I think in this space we're getting rid of one of the goats here. I am going to play the Rabbit. The intention is that we're going to, like, use the Merlin Rabbit to kill either one of these. Like, it can kill the crab or it can kill the Pan Shadow. We can just sing Teeth and it can do it that way. Either option I think is acceptable. If we end up just opting to hit the Merlin crab with it, I think that's reasonable as well. They just play a Maui, sure. Certainly makes the Goofy look a lot worse. We can kill both of these and just play Maleficent Sorceress. That is an option, which I think I'm kind of okay with. Alternatively to the Maleficent Sorceress is I bounce the Rabbit back to my hand instead, which I think I like more. Like, we ink this, We can quest for 1 then still as well. Like, we can quest for 1, we cast Teeth here and here. And then we just play Fox, bounce this, draw a card. And then we can just bash the crab, or we can choose not to as well. If we don't, it gives us the option of Singing Friends. I think I'll just hit here and say go. Like, I'm not that worried if they just have a Maui in play. Like, it doesn't limit a ton of things. They do get to sing with it, which is, you know, reasonable for them, I guess. Like, I'd like to play out 1 or 2 things maybe next turn. Trying to set up for like a B prep potentially. This couldn't be a spot where we goofy here, but I think I'd almost rather just play the rabbit. I don't particularly think that we need this teeth. So I think I'm just going to ink it and pass. We're just playing a little bit of a slower game because our opponent doesn't have a ton of draw and we do. Like, I'm kind of on board with just untapping and playing Ursula. And then setting up like an Ursula B prep sort of situation. So they're going to gain 2, 3, 4. So they can go to 11 if we do it this way. I think that's okay, because we can put them back to 9 with the Ursula. Something like this. And then say go. And then after this turn, we can be prepared and then maybe just play 2 things. We could play like Goofy plus Mini, or just Goat plus Mini or whatever. So they found a rabbit finally. They are just beating us down. We'll see what else they play, if they play anything here. They didn't ink, which is generally good for us, I would think. They are going to draw 2 cards off of this, so it will allow them to sort of claw back into the game. We will have to play around Tremaine, so I don't think that I can just run out Ursula here. But I'm probably okay running out like Goofy Mini or something to that effect. And I think I'm fine drawing cards here as well. And now I can actually just play Ursula with the mini draw, which is good. That means that we don't need this Maui as much. Let's sing Be Prepared. We'll all draw all of our cards here. They draw cards, we draw cards. They goat, put us to 10, we Ursula them back to 9. And then we'll play our mini Always Classy and say go. And I'm even considering, depending upon what they run out on their turn, just doing a Snake and replaying the Ursula, like questing with it for 3, and then replaying it to drain them again and draw a card. If they opt just to Be Prepared and then say go, I'm probably fine just running out 2 things and passing again. Something like Pan's Shadow and maybe Goofy, or Pan's Shadow Mini and then just inking something. I guess this is our ink. We could run out 3 things, that's also an option. Like, I'd really like to run out the Pan Shadow and 2 things. Or either the Pan Shadow and 2 things, or like the Pan Shadow and the Goofy. Maybe we don't need the 1-drop as much. This unfortunately doesn't play around Tremaine as well. Whereas if we do this plus the 1-drop, it does play around Tremaine a bit more. Yeah, I'm just not playing good today. I think that's our problem, is we're just playing pretty bad, and then we're we're not setting ourselves up for success because every time that we have the option of playing around something, we're just not doing that. So, such is life, I guess. We'll draw 2 here. I guess we're going to ink a mini and then play the other 2. It happens, yeah. And my heart's just not in it after going 0-3. I'm kind of ready for the metagame to switch to something else. I mean, they might be in a spot where they just B-prep us, and that's, like, pretty bad. But we can still do goat, snake, goat, catch up a little bit on lore. And if they don't have that, like, we have a pretty sizable clock here. We are quite a bit ahead on ink, so we can do more things. Like, if we rip a rabbit, we can draw a lot of cards. I don't know, our hand isn't miserable, but like, we're not super set up for success, especially if they are doing things like this. Like, our board just doesn't really answer that at all. None of our cards interact particularly favorably to this. Like, they're going to gain infinite lore this turn. And we don't really have a good solution to that either. We can stop one of the things. We can hit Goofy plus a thing and stop another one, I guess. No, that doesn't work either. None of our cards... Like, this card fucking is trash. It is just not good anymore. I'm getting really sick of playing it because it's just dog shit all the time. Like, it just doesn't have text. It does nothing on this board. He is less than useless here. We, like, have to go out of our way to kill this board in the dumbest way that I can possibly imagine, and it doesn't even set us up for success. It just delays the inevitable. But it's like what I have to do, I guess. So we hit here, hit here, hit here. We bounce this. We replay this. We hit here. Like, all our opponent has done is just, like, not played cards. We've played so many more cards than them. We've literally drawn 5 cards extra off of them, and it's been irrelevant. I just, like, don't understand what we're doing wrong today. Just, like, consistently getting destroyed by every opponent and every choice. Just double goat us. Have another goat, sure. Goat surfer. I mean, we have to, I guess, draw beat prep right now. Okay. We drew B-prep, I guess, so we're not just dead. We go to 18, so we're dead to a goat. I can't really ink here, because I need this goat to be able to close the game. It's really tragic. Like, I want to ink the goat and play Kuzco, but I don't think we can. I just don't think the Kuzco does enough. It's really tragic. Really tragic. We just need all of our cards. We do this. We play rabbit. We draw a card. I guess we ink the Kuzco and play the mini. Just to get another thing on the clock. Okay. You drew a goat. This is, what, 15? I can't attack with the Tremaine. If our out is Ursula specifically, I can't even attack with the Tremaine. So this only gets us to 15, 16, 17, 18, so that's not enough. So if I attack with this, I have to bounce this and draw Ursula exactly. Yeah, I didn't fucking draw Ursula either, of course. Neat. What a fucking game. Just like, it's just unreal today. Maybe I just don't understand how to play this game somehow. Over the course of a handful of days, we've just forgotten how to play. This card is just so fucking dog shit. I hate Maleficent Sorceress. It is so mid. Fucking just does nothing. Nice. Like, Maleficent Sorceress literally doesn't do anything. One drop. Nice, right on time. So we just hope that Surfer Surfer is good enough to win this game. I don't believe that it will be, but we'll run it out anyway. They play a Cusco, so they have the old 1-2 on the draw. Quest here. This snake is useless. Play this thing, pass. We don't have any draw cards, so this has to work, and if it doesn't, we're just gonna lose, right? Like, we don't have any other interaction. We may even have to just, like, play this out just so that we can bounce the Fox the turn after. You can hit both of these to draw us a card. The Cusco. It's fine. Probably goes into the Inkwell, weirdly. Get rid of a Sorcerer, a Surfer, just play a Fox, so they almost certainly have a Pan Shadow in their hand. We also have a Pan Shadow, I guess. Like, how do we beat a Pan Shadow here? Do we just not quest with our Surfer? That doesn't feel great. But, like, what is the other option? Like, either we let them Pan Shadow our Minnie Mouse, or we're just doing nothing on our turn. We could always play a 1-drop and then Fox this. Like, this is the draw that you need when you have Pan Shadow in your deck, right? Is you do some stuff, and then you just play a Fox, and then now you are challenging Surfer, and you get to win very easily on the draw. But if you don't have that, then you lose. So I don't know what we're supposed to do in this spot here to try and keep up with what they're doing then, because I can't just let my mini Surfer get eaten for free by a 4-3, because that's fucking miserable. And I can't do nothing with our Surfer either, because that's fucking miserable. Yeah, whatever. We'll just do this and then say go. just opt to sing. Sure. They play a mini of their own, and then they pass, I assume. And now we're just still in the same spot as we were the turn before, but now we can, I guess, kill the fox. Because they can still mini and hit the pan shadows. We have another pan shadow of our own, though, so there's some value there. We have no way of winning this game already, and I fucking hate that. It is so miserable. Which means that we just have too many pan shadows in the deck, probably. I have to hit here. Like, I have to quest here, and I guess just play a pan shadow. Which is just worse than, like, not doing that. I guess it's untapped. Let's do this, I guess, and say go. I don't know, maybe we just are supposed to ignore this whole thing and make them have the pan shadow, and we're just, like, overplaying ourselves. We've just been playing ourselves this whole time, like none of the other things mattered. Okay, I guess we get rid of Goofy. We Fox this thing. Hit here, bash with both. Yeah, it doesn't really matter what thing you pick, because it's just wrong a lot, you know? Like, now if they have the Pan Shadow, they have a Maui that can kill our shit. It's kind of a crapshoot no matter what we do. If it's Tremaine, that's fine. Tremaine, we can get rid of the Fox. We still have these. Like, maybe we're just not making them have it, and they just have never had it, and we've been playing around something that just isn't real, you know? Which is not really a great place to be either. I'm just overplaying myself. So we do this and pass. I don't think I play these. I make them have to do something to this board. If it's another Tremaine, we can just do this. But if they B-prep it, then that's fine. Then we have some follow-up, I guess. If they have another B-prep, then, you know, I guess get blasted. Alright, go. Okay. Your turn. Yep, you have an Ursula. I've built the deck wrong. Like, we just... I don't know. Need to be playing it slightly differently, and we're just not. Our opponent just gets to draw 10 cards a turn to our 0, which is really exciting for us. Like, do we just run one of these out instead of 2? Do we just not ink one and stay at 6? Maybe. I don't know how you can not keep going up. But, you know, maybe I'm just wrong. I don't know, sure. There is a lot of card draw in this deck. Not in my hand, obviously, but... I don't think I have a choice. I think I have to just cast that. Oh my fucking god. Are you serious? Sure. Play out a bunch of shitters. Like, I'm still behind on the race, even with these shitters. Whatever. I guess replay the snake. So that it's untapped. And then say go. I don't know. If they attack and kill an Olaf or whatever, that's better than them questing for one, I suppose. Maybe they can play another thing and then we get them. This is just, like, not a good game. Yeah, partner's good, doggo's good. So we're dead to a goat if they have one. They might have played it if they had one, though. They go to 18. We can kill this. We can go to 15. Like, draw 2 cards. Is that even good? We can go to 16 and then just get them here. And then we can do this rabbit, and draw 2 cards the next turn. Like, the question is, if I go to 15, I'm just not racing at all. If I play this out and, like, draw 2 cards, I'm still not even racing. Even if we go to 16 here and we play 2 more, let them go to 18. We go to 16. We untap with... Like, they have to have nothing in hand for that to work. I think it has to just be this B prep and then pass, I guess. And we just have to hope that they have nothing, which is not great. Sure. They just have got a goat, huh? Probably should have inked the Maui, because it doesn't really matter. But we're just, like, dead to a bounce anyway, so... Maybe they'll put me out of my misery. Got 3 cards left in their hand. What have we got? Maleficent Dragon. Staggering. Yeah. Sure, I'm fucking big dead, I guess. Yeah, whatever. Alright, I'm dead. Okay, well, this tournament was a fucking disaster. I'm not gonna play in the last round. I don't know if the way that the deck is constructed is it's bad, or we're just drawing really bad today, and it's variance. I cannot fucking possibly imagine that it is the Kuzco at 4 that is the problem. And I cannot imagine that it is just the one extra uninkable here that's why our deck has been operating so poorly. So I don't really know what it is. Either we're flooded on 1s when we only have 6 of them, or the rest of our deck just doesn't function. So, I don't know. We just drew bad, played bad, And I think we're just done for today. I don't really think that much would need to change with this list for me to want to run it back. I don't necessarily think that we need the Goofies anymore. I think that they are fine. But, like, I don't know about these fucking Yukon flies. I don't know about any of these cards, because no matter what I'm teching for, I'm still losing in these matchups anyway. So I should just go back to a stock list and then not try to play cards that do other things. Because the only thing that matters is drawing good and not drawing bad. Everything else is irrelevant. Like, you can have whatever tech pieces you want in your deck. You can flood your deck full of all of the tech that you want, and it doesn't matter. If you draw your cards in a bad order, you lose anyway. Like, we were on the play twice and we lost both times. We were on the draw twice and we lost both times. To the mirror or otherwise. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just done with Lorcana for a minute, I think. If another tournament comes up, I don't think that there's anything this weekend. Like, I'm just, this format is fucking dog water, and I'm just big over it. It is just not terribly fun anymore. Like, I'm certainly not going to be grinding the ladder. I wanted to maybe try the red Mufasa deck at some point, but I don't think I care enough, because there's not really any tournaments that I'm going to be playing in between now and, like, when I would actually need it. And we'll just wait another week or two. You know, if the new set comes out, like the full spoiler, in a few days, like if it comes out on the 12th or the 19th or whatever, then we'll probably jump in and start grinding the lab and making some new decks. But I'm super over this format. I just don't care anymore. It just isn't really super fun to play at this point, because it is entirely draw dependent. Like, if your draw is bad, you're just dead. If you get to 7, if your opponent is ever at 17 lore, you're already dead. If they're at 14, you're already dead. I just don't understand how they printed a card like Goat to begin with. Every deck that we played was purple and something. All 4 of the decks that we played today were purple. They were amethyst something. So every game feels the same, because this is one of the dumbest cards I've ever seen in any game. Because there's no other way to interact with it. We're playing block constructed, and this is a card that would get restricted very easily normally. Because it is just the only deck that you can play is one that finishes with something like this. Because it is just so overtuned. It's insanity. There's so little ways of interacting with direct lore gain like this to begin with, that having a card that is inkable, for one, having it be a guaranteed 2 lore gain anytime that it gets cast, because both in and out it gains a lore. So then anytime you bounce it, anytime it dies, it's just always gaining lore. You only need to gain fucking 12 lore to win the game with Amethyst, period. You only need to gain 12. I'm probably playing too many cards that gain lore. I should just be casting my goats more often. Like, I don't need to be doing all of this, let's play some evasives to gain lore. I can just do a couple of these things and then play goats and then win with the goats. And that's a much more aggressive plan that is just already on what you're doing. You know, and the games where you're not gaining really any lore early, you just do rabbit and you bounce the rabbit a bunch of times and you bury your opponent in card advantage. You know, it's why Kuzco is good, because in spots where they don't answer it easily, you just get to attack forever. But if your opponent has a thing that can just answer it, then even that feels bad. All the 1-drops feel bad. Like, I don't know. Every time that I've been playing this deck in the last 10 or 15 games has felt just like, no matter what decisions I'm making, that we're massively behind what our opponent is doing. Whether they're just drawing more cards, or, you know, they get to 12 or 14 lore and you feel like the game is already over, because no matter what choice your opponent makes, what cards they play out, they play a Kuzco and a 1-drop, you're just dead to a goat. If they play a Tremaine and you don't answer it, you're dead to a goat. If they play Ursula and you don't answer it, you're dead to a goat. So in all those situations, like, you never feel like you can be in a position of safety ever. because the GOAT just always finishes the game easily, and I suspect that the game is going to get more like that and not less, which I hope is not the case. I hope that there's other ways of preventing, you know, that instant lore gain or having more or better answers to shit like that. But as it stands, all they've done is add more things that gain lore non-interactively and at a speed that is outside of the normal rate, outside of having to challenge. The pan that is able to gain lore for whatever location when you move there, the items that are able to instantly gain lore from one of your characters just by tapping them or whatever, like the lucky dime. Those sort of effects are like problematic, right? Because they end up being like the plan. Every deck becomes a combo deck. There's not enough answers that are even functional, let alone good, to be able to keep up with just playing idiots and then finishing the game with some sort of an instant lore game. We're playing Teeth and Ambitions. This card is dog shit. Actually dog shit. You deal 2 damage to both their thing and your thing. That's not even good unless you're leveraging the self-damage. It's just a shitty deal 2 damage card. They're literally giving Steel this card, except it doesn't deal 2 damage to your things. And then because Lady Tremaine is a known quantity, and because there's so few answers that do things, you can easily play around something like Lady Tremaine by just playing another thing, going a little wider, and there's no way to punish going wide in this game at all, unless you're playing Steel. Anybody that thinks that Be Prepared should be banned just does not understand how to evaluate cards at all. If Be Prepared didn't exist in the format, every single deck would be Steel. All of them. Every deck. Whether they're purple or amethyst or whatever, every single deck in the entire game would be Steel and something. And that is because the only answer that can ever answer more than one fucking thing is Grab Your Sword or Be Prep. Everything else is just a single answer. So when somebody plays a card like, I don't know, say Rabbit or Maleficent or whatever, that does a thing and then also puts a body on board, if your answer doesn't draw a card like Let the Storm Rage on, you are just deleting card advantage to get rid of a thing on the board. You're just discarding a card to lose value against a thing. And sometimes that's okay if you're able to sing it so you don't also lose tempo. But the reason that people aren't playing a ton of Smash, even though it is good in this format, is because you literally can't use your entire turn on doing that effect. Not as many decks are running things like Dragonfire because you just get destroyed by taking your entire turn off to do a 1-for-1 on a thing, because it doesn't address the other stuff that's already on their board. So if you're playing from behind on the draw, which you are the majority of the time in this game, then you cast your Dragonfire on their thing, and then their other 2 guys are still gaining that stuff every turn, and you answered a 1-for-1. You didn't gain anything out of it, you didn't get ahead. That's why Tremaine originally looks very good, or why Maleficent Dragon generally looks good, is because you're doing a thing but still developing on the board. If you're not also developing on the board, you're just getting buried. Literally buried by decks that are doing 2 things in a turn or gaining some value on their things when they come into play. There's a reason that almost every character that sees play does something when it comes into play. It's because if they do remove it, then it is terrible for them. So if your thing doesn't have evasive, if it doesn't have 3 toughness, you can't even play it, because the best removal spells in the format are Steel, dealing 2 damage and drawing a card, or just dealing 2 damage to everything. And like, if Steel doesn't have Tinkerbell, even Grab Your Sword isn't good enough against some of these decks a lot of the time, because they play a bunch of 3 toughness things. If all you can do is 2 damage, it's just not good enough. But, you know, again, it is what it is, right? The game will change quite a bit, hopefully, with locations and with the introduction of just more cards to the format. The format is very small. This plays identically to how most block-constructed formats in Magic the Gathering used to, where there are not very many cards. Most of them are not very good. So then all you end up seeing are the very few amount of removal that's generally in the format. In this case, Be Prepared, Swords, Tinkerbell, some of these songs that are functionally removal spells. And then you see whatever cards draw something and then have some sort of evasive. Otherwise, the cards aren't good enough because there just aren't enough answers to things. There's nothing to punish the hyper aggro decks outside of Steel. If you're not playing Steel, like if you're not versus Steel with a deck like this, all you need to do is literally play every card in your hand and turn them sideways every turn of the game. That's it. Because there aren't answers before turn 7 to clean up multiple things. So if you're not playing Steel, you just don't have answers to stuff if they're going wide. Right, so you get in this really, really aggressive rock, paper, scissors situation where the deck that has the answers, the better answers, generally beats all of the decks that those answers are good against. But sometimes it will lose to a deck that draws more cards and loses to those decks, so you rock, paper, scissors. Be Prepared is generally good against those Steel decks because it is able to clean up their slightly larger bodied characters, Beast and Tinkerbell, with a single card as opposed to needing multiple to deal with it. And it's the only reason that Ursula is even good is for that same situation, is it's theoretically good against Steel just because it has a large toughness into what they're doing. But I don't know. I've looked at the spoilers some, and so far I haven't seen any cards that really dramatically change how the format is going to play out. I have not seen anything that makes it look crazy different. There are still a lot of cards yet to be spoiled, but so far the best cards that I've seen all die to Maui. Literally all of them. And they're all still pretty soft to things like Fox, because you're able to leverage Rush to still get your card advantage from, bouncing this back to your hand, but then also you rush, and then your character lives is still just a 4/3 or a 6/5 in this case. And I haven't seen anything other than that really is going to change much. At least as far as like the location stuff is concerned. I think that Pluto is going to probably be really problematic. I really don't think that Prince Eric is even that good of a card. I think it's okay, but it is also uninkable. Like, I don't know where I would even fit Prince Eric in this list, or in these lists at all. Because if your opponent doesn't have anything on the board, it is just like a bad card, because it's really low statted. It never trades up into anything. It just one-for-one trades with stuff. But if they don't have any cards, it's just an uninkable 2/2/2, which is okay. But it's not anything that's, like, insane for these decks, either. Right? Like, it doesn't necessarily solve any of the problems that the deck naturally faces. And I think Agrabah is okay as well, but I think it's only a 1/5. Like, it only has 5 lore. So if your opponent has Crab, which they can very easily do, and then anything with 2 power, or if they have, a snake and a crab, or they have a fox and a 1-drop, or whatever, they can just kill it. And maybe the card itself is nice because it makes the game slow down. And maybe the locations will slow the game down because it becomes like a call and response where your opponent plays a location, then the other person is answering it, and then it does that for a couple of turns, and then eventually you are like doing something like a Be Prepared or a Swords to clean up the things that they were responding to the locations with. And you're sort of just using the locations as a way of limiting lore gain. But if your opponent doesn't choose to answer them, then it's a way of closing the game out yourself. I'm not really sure. But I would say that Agrabah is much easier to deal with than Surfer Mini. Like, significantly easier to deal with, because you just don't have to have, like, bad cards in your deck to deal with it. You just get to play normal cards, you get to play more crabs, and then all of a sudden, you know, crab becomes a very easy way of interacting with all the locations, because your characters aren't taking damage when they're in combat against the locations. So then you're just like, crab, bash it, you know, deal your damage directly. I don't know. I'm not really sure. But we'll have to see when we get a bit more cards. We've mostly only been seeing like commons and uncommons lately, and that doesn't necessarily mean that we're not seeing good cards. You know, Goat is an uncommon. You know, Snake and Cusco, like, these are all playable cards. Surfer Mini is an uncommon. But you're not going to be seeing anything that's like revolutionizing what's happening in the game unless you start seeing some of the higher rarity cards, you know, your Be Prepareds, things like Tremaine, stuff that is able to do more than just be an effect, be a character, right? But there's nothing that is crazy new so far that I've seen. Like, I think there are some areas where, like, like that purple song that allows you to remove damage counters from something, bestow a gift or whatever, move a damage counter from a chosen character to a chosen opposing character. Like, I think that's an interesting removal that's different than Teeth and Ambitions. Like, it heals your thing, it deals damage. But I don't know if that's good enough on its own to be, like, a card. You know, maybe if that's on a body like a Maleficent, maybe that becomes a little bit better. You know, being able to fit more like 187 type effects, things that do you know, murder a character when it comes into play, or remove a character, you know, like Lady Tremaine or Maleficent Dragon. Being able to, like, do a thing and then also another thing by getting a body on the board are things that are very important, and I just don't know if you can play an action that doesn't forward that game plan as well. I don't know. It's tough. But we need to see another 100 cards before we really focus too much on that. But for now, I'm done. Can't really talk too much more about it. Like, I've said a lot of this before as well. Yeah, there needs to be more things that, like, reduce lore. Like, Ursula is good as a way of doing that, but almost all the other cards that reduce lore are bad. Like, Aladdin was okay. You know, the Shift Aladdin, the 3-drop comes into play, reduces a lore, and then the 7-drop can shift for 5 and drain them for 2. It was okay, but it's, like, too slow. The 2 toughness, like being a 2/2 for 3, kind of where Maleficent suffers, is it just isn't strong enough on its own to do anything there, because it just dies to everything, and then you don't get the shift. Like, it's way too telegraphed for that to be viable. So then you're just getting your Aladdin killed, and then you just have a 7-cost 5/5 that doesn't do enough when it comes into play on its own. And because it's so telegraphed, like, there just aren't enough cards in the game currently. And maybe that's all that we need to fix a lot of these problems, is just quantity of effects, so that we see a little bit more diversity in the builds. That'd be cool. I don't know. We'll see. Maybe we mix it up next season, and we don't focus as hard on the Amethyst cards. But we do have a lot to get spoiled yet, before we really have to think too much about that. I don't know. Soon we'll figure that out, but until we get a bit more spoilers, I think I'm probably not going to be jamming too much ladder. But once we get enough cards that I feel comfortable brewing up some decks, we'll start doing that, and then I'll clean this up, and we'll start trying to figure out how to attack the meta come set 3. So, all right, what do we got for other people playing the video game. We can go over and send you over to Bobby, who blasted us in round 1 here, I suppose. That's how he spelled it in this, yeah. So I'll go and send you over to Bobby, who I assume is still doing pretty well. They've been playing the steel version of the deck, which I think has been quite strong. And I will see y'all next time.